Good evening, everybody. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Jeremy.
Yeah, welcome to the 13th dimension again.
Well, thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a really good show because tonight we are not going to be talking about the paranormal. We are not going to be talking about Greg's adventures on the Spirit Box. Tonight, we're going to be talking about something I know absolutely nothing about with the occasional appearance of Linus the Cat. We're going to be talking about Doctor Who tonight.
We sure are.
Yeah.
And you're going to be wowing us with your knowledge tonight, Jeremy.
Yeah. What started this is that last year you came to the house because you were dropping something off on your way out to Mansfield, Ohio.
Yep.
And in the process of that, we were talking about Doctor Who, and I had absolutely no idea anything about it. I have never seen it. I have heard about it over the years, but I have just never watched the show.
Mm-hmm.
So this episode gives me that unique opportunity to talk about something that I have no knowledge of. So this is going to be a real educational show for me personally, and I know that you have a lot of viewers not just on your ghost box shows, but also when it comes to BBC television in general.
Yeah, no, I do a British television group called From the Archive, and really it's about really obscure British television, and obviously Doctor Who becomes part of that, and it really is a celebration of all those shows. It's something that's been with me since I've been a child, and Doctor Who isn't the first of the British television series that I have seen. So it's just it is so much fun to be able to talk about it. I think what the hard part is actually trying to explain to people what Doctor Who is, because it is so much now. There's so much to it.
Well, there's only three things about Doctor Who that I know about.
Okay.
Doctor Who himself or herself, depending on which series you're talking about.
Yeah.
The companions that they have.
Yeah.
And the phone booth.
Police box, but yes, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is gonna be the frustrating part for you, Jeremy. You're gonna say something, and the weirdo in me is just not gonna allow it to pass without some kind of like correction. It just us Doctor Who fans, if we really know the stuff, we just cannot allow it to happen. Otherwise, I'm gonna bite through my lip and it's gonna bleed. That's kind of how that works.
Hey, I can completely relate to you on that because I'm kind of like the same way on certain things as well. What's unique about Doctor Who is that when it comes to most TV series, no matter where they come from, they usually only last an average of about 6 or 7 years.
Yep.
This one has gone on way longer than that.
A little bit longer than 7 years. Yeah, it's on November 23rd. We're celebrating the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. And although the series hasn't been running continuously for 60 years, it's not far off, to be perfectly honest. It ran on BBC between 1963 and 1989. It came back for a one-off in 1996. And then it started up again in 2005 with a very fresh new look. And what happened when it came back in 2005 was that it wasn't like a given that it was the same series that ran before, but the showrunner, Russell T Davies, what he did was he basically took, like, say that this is Doctor Who, the show, and this is continuity. It didn't start with the continuity and Doctor Who being thrown at you. We eventually kind of learned together that this was actually indeed the same series, and that there was just it didn't overpower people, especially the new people who had never seen it before. It didn't overpower them with all this continuity. And what ended up happening, Jeremy, was Doctor Who became a massive success. I mean, just blew everybody away. No one could believe how popular it was around the world. And so and it kind of peaked a little bit. It kind of went off a little bit popularity wise, but I think it's about to just skyrocket again. I really do, because there's all new stuff happening, and it's going to be incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Well, I remember back when I hearing about the show when I was in high school, and that was in the late '90s.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and at the time, it wasn't running then.
Mm-mm.
And I don't remember anything about the film that they had, at least according to what's
Yep.
here on my screen. That there was a film in 1996.
Yep. Yep.
I don't recall hearing anything about that. Just a TV show.
So the 1996 film was the first time that the BBC worked with a U.S. broadcaster, Fox. It was produced through Universal Films, and the idea was that it was going to become a TV series for Fox. But
Okay.
ultimately, they all knew before the film even aired that it wasn't going to work out that way. But the film has a lot of special meaning for me because I worked at a Fox affiliate at the time. So we had access to a lot of reference, a lot of stuff, and everyone thought it was going to be we thought it was going to be pretty big. We thought it was going to be pretty incredible. But what ended up happening, that it aired on May 14th, 1996, and it aired the same night as the NBA championship with the Bulls, but also aired against the season finale or series finale, I think, of Roseanne, where a season where Dan had the heart attack.
That would not have stood a chance at all. Not with that show.
I think it came in at 76 in the ratings out of the
Who?
Nielsen Top 100.
Well, I definitely know that Roseanne, even there towards the end, was immensely popular,
Yes.
and people today still talk about that series finale.
Absolutely. And the thing was too, I think what Russell, when he brought the series back in 2005, I think what he learned from that was also within the first like 5 minutes of the TV movie, a lot of continuity was thrown at people who had never seen the show before. And I remember our receptionist at Fox 29 where I worked, she's just like, I couldn't understand what happened. You have this main character and he gets shot in the first like 10 minutes and he changes into someone else, and it's like, yeah, that's, I get it, and so it just really fell flat. It did well in the UK, but the UK, even though it was a BBC property, the UK was probably the least important aspect of Doctor Who being made. As much as it would have upset a lot of British viewers, whatever the BBC wanted was hinging on what Universal did ultimately.
Well, would it be fair to say that the film they were trying to focus on the American audience to try to get them into Doctor Who?
Yeah, very much so. There and that's and anyone who is a British viewer, they hold Doctor Who very close to them. They're very particular about the Britishness of Doctor Who. And here we are, the series, the film takes place in San Francisco, even though it was shot in Vancouver, because that's just how television worked, especially in the 90s. And there was like bike chases, they're being like, the doctor is on a motorcycle being chased and stuff, and all the guns. I mean, the whole, him being the doctor at the beginning being shot, which causes him to regenerate into a new actor who is going to be like the new era of Doctor Who. That is something that UK viewers weren't all that pleased with, especially the hardcore ones. They thought, my gosh, what have you done to our series? You've Americanized it, just like and ruined it. A lot of people were not happy about that. Even though the actor who played the doctor was still British, they still wanted to have, they I mean, and I think amongst most of us Doctor Who fans, we do want that quintessential British feel to it. Even though the doctor might be on some other planet, we want all the aliens to have a British accent. We want them to talk about, offering the doctor some tea, even though they're not on Earth, that sort of thing. It's a very powerful and big part of what Doctor Who is.
Well, I can definitely attest to that because I have seen some British films and British TV series, and there is a definite difference.
Mm-hmm.
The one TV series that I remember vividly, I don't remember the name of it, but I know that it's set in like some sort of a shopping mall.
Mm-hmm. Like,
Um,
yeah.
I think you may know what I'm talking about. One of the main actors, he's a really skinny older guy, balding, um, horseshoe hairstyle.
Do you know? I mean, because I mean, I think about when something is on like a British, like a
Oh,
store. Are you being served? Comes to mind.
yeah,
Yeah, Chuck is on it. Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. Because I was getting ready to say that it was like a question in the show title, but yeah, are you being served? That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Very much so.
I think that was actually my first introduction to British television because I want to say it played on PBS or something
Oh
like
yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
But that was really the only time I've been exposed to British television. And then later on in the late 2000s, I would see certain films that were made made in Britain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the most recent one that I can think of, I think it's called Ghost Story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, I want to say it has Ben Affleck's younger brother in it.
Sure. Well, and also keep in mind, Jeremy, virtually every James Bond film is a British film, and virtually every Star Wars film is a British film. They're all over at Pinewood Studios in the UK, and you'll that's why you'll get so many of the actors. So once again, that's why all the aliens in Star Wars have a British accent because you either L Street Studios or Pinewood. There's just a lot, you know, and all the Harry Potters were done out there. The Batman, especially the 1989 Batman and Batman Returns were out in the UK. So I mean, it's a very lucrative film business out in the UK.
Yeah, it is. And I wish that more of the films would get brought over here. Normally, they only come over here on DVDs,
Sure.
but I haven't really seen many theatrical releases,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
except for the rare occasions.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's the problem is that you know, us Americans think that only films of worth are, you know, started in America, you know, and that's never a wise way to approach things. You know, everyone, so you know, all these companies think that America is the center of the world, and it's, you know, it's not true. I mean, if you look at like Bollywood, for example, that is a much bigger film industry. All of the India film industry, which is broken up, Bollywood is only just a part of it. There's so many different pieces to the film industry, which is much bigger than Hollywood, you know, but we don't really know anything about it.
I know. Uh, okay, I did not know about this one. The Office. I'm
Oh,
quite familiar with that show. I've
yeah.
never seen it, but I know a lot about it. The memes alone from The Office, but I never knew that that was a British British series.
Absolutely. And the thing about The Office, the UK Office, I mean, that's where Ricky Gervais, that's where us Americans really got our first look at him is through The Office, and popularity from that. And the thing is the UK version of The Office is a lot more it's a lot more potent than the US. I mean, where you're left like on a camera shot for a long time feeling uncomfortable for the characters, and it's really funny. And it's one of the things that just, I mean, the US one did so well, but the UK one, in my mind, that's still just the absolute uh
I had no idea there was a difference because the only one I'm familiar with is one that's got Rainn Wilson, Steve Carell.
yep. Yeah.
That's the only one I'm familiar with. I did not know that there was another version of the show.
Yep. No, absolutely. It's I mean, it started first, and Bev, we are still live. Said she's from the UK. Um
Yeah.
and you know, the thing is too, I mean,
Yep, we're
th-
here.
there, I mean, there is The Office. There's other amazing, I mean, real recent programs that is really worth your time checking out, such as like Ghosts. I mean, there's a US version, but it started in the UK as well.
I've heard of that. I haven't checked it out yet, but I have heard of that.
And then I love the IT Crowd, which is absolutely hilarious. I guarantee you've seen memes from that program. You've just seen a lot of stuff on that. And also, there's a amazing person in there named Matt Berry. He is just phenomenal, and he does a show. He did a show called The Toast of London, Toast of Hollywood, and it's just laugh out loud funny. It's just so good, and it's very profane, which I love. And it's just a lot of these are great programs to binge. And if you have like BritBox or something like that,
Yeah,
you're streaming, it's a great way to see some of this stuff.
it just jogged up a memory. I don't remember the exact title of it, but there is a film that was made in the UK, and it was sort of like a paranormal show. It was a movie, but it ended up being the lady was doing the investigation. She grew up wanting to be an investigator. And what she ended up finding out is that everything that was happening in this castle that they lived in was actually from man-made stuff, and that there were no ghosts there.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact title of it, but it had a name in it. But it was a British lady who was the investigator,
Mm-hmm.
and you saw her grow up throughout the show. It's like it wasn't until I want to say maybe about a half hour into the show when she was in her adult form.
Okay.
She started out young. Her parents died, and she was raised by either the parents' butler or her grandfather.
So a couple things with this that is interesting. First of all, you're talking about paranormal shows for like the UK, like BBC. One of the big kind of not scandal, wouldn't go quite as far as that, but really caused a lot of concern back in 1992 was a program that aired on Halloween called Ghost Watch. And it was a play on words from another series that the BBC would run called Crime Watch, which was always kind of like, in a sense, like America's Most Wanted, always like looking at, different crimes and whatnot. But Ghost Watch was you had some very famous people, presenters and stuff, and they were doing a paranormal investigation of a location. And it never was really super clear that this was all pre-recorded and none of it was live. It came across as if it was live, but it wasn't. And if you watched it, people would notice that there's some entity that would be in the background in a lot of shots. You count them about 6 times, that there's this spirit called Pipes that's in the background. And what ended up happening was at the end, one of the presenters who was in this house trying to investigate and try to do the live thing, she gets taken underneath the stairs and all hell breaks loose. And people don't know this is not real. So someone who they grew up watching, they're like, what the hell happened to Sarah Green? And what ended up happening was there was this boy who was, and this is a viewer, he was like 18 years old, who had mental disabilities. And he's like, Pipes is talking to me, and he took his own life. And so that was a huge scandal, and actually went to the House of Commons to talk about what happened there. And so last year celebrated 30th anniversary of this, and watching it again, and now being a paranormal investigator and watching it, it was like, holy cow. I mean, some of the stuff that they got right on there was pretty impressive. And the fact is, the way that they did it, it was all analog cameras and stuff. There's some points that were pretty chilling. Anyone who's interested in that sort of thing should check it out, because it's really a pretty phenomenal production. And that was about 90 minutes.
Yeah, I would definitely like to see that. And you say that this was 30 years ago?
Yeah, it aired in 1992. Yeah.
Oh, so that would have been well before any of what we do was brought out into mainstream. So nobody would have had a clue.
Absolutely. And then there's also back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, there was a screenwriter by the name of Nigel Neal. And some might know Nigel Neal as horror buffs that he wrote Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, and that is don't gauge his work off of that.
Uh,
But he I believe he's the one that came up with the stone tape theory as in terms of what it's being used for, because I've never been able to figure it out anywhere else. But he did a play for the BBC back in 1972 called The Stone Tape. And it was exactly what we think it is now, where the idea of being able to record to stone, like something traumatic will get impressed into the stone. And I think I haven't seen anywhere else that it says where the stone tape theory originated from. So if there is one, I'd love to know, because he was always kind of ahead of his time with that sort of stuff.
okay. I just found the title of the movie that I was describing is called Miss Willoughby and the Haunted Bookshop.
Hmm, I'm not familiar.
It, I thought it was really, really good.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, I thought it was very good. Um, so, so back to Doctor Who. You know, you was talking earlier about the continuity,
Yeah,
and that's something for like somebody like me who's never seen the show, but has seen what it's about.
yeah.
One thing that would really throw somebody off about the continuity is that, you know, with them changing doctors every few years.
And that's a very good point. What and Chuck in the comments that said the same thing that I'm about to say is that anyone who wants to start watching Doctor Who has not watched it before, in my opinion, if you have all those 1963 to 1989 episodes, take those and put them to the side. Where anybody who wants to get started on it, I would recommend starting with the newer 2005 series, which is not even new anymore. That's coming up in 20 years, on 20 years and 2 years. But it's a great way because it's kind of a whole new series, and then it eventually folds in all these concepts that date back to the earlier ones, but not right away, not in a way that overwhelms. I mean, it just takes its time, but yet it's creating all new worlds and wonderful stories. And I think that it's a very there's a mystery to the character when it comes back in 2005 that eventually, like an onion, it kind of peels away. And I really think that's a great place to start.
Okay. Um, so with Doctor Who traveling back and forth through time, um, have they had episodes where the current Doctor Who would go back to a specific point in time where he went to before in a different series and either try to undo what he did or on it?
Yes, absolutely. There is I mean, there's a lot of things that have them kind of crossing over. And it's really, and I'm not going to give too many examples because it gives away some major plot points, but it certainly does. Um, it really does do things where one doctor tries to undo something else, and it's actually a major plot point for the new series coming back, because we're led to believe one thing and something else ends up transpiring, which is really pretty cool. But that's the payoff. That's the payoff of watching some of those, because you do get that. And sometimes they will cross over each other's paths, and we will absolutely, Brad, exactly. And they'll cross over each other's path and meet each other. And I mean, the thing about Doctor Who is that it's literally about anything. You have Seinfeld, that is a show about nothing. Doctor Who is a show about everything. Not
Okay.
only can the Doctor travel in our time backwards and forwards, but any planet's time backwards and forwards, and it travels through space, so you can go anywhere in space. So you can, and sometimes some of it takes place outside of time. Um, it truly is so flexible that it can be about anything, and that the format of the show can change from episode to episode, where you can have it a little bit lighter and funnier, you can make it dark, you can make it creepy, you can make it dangerous. It doesn't follow a constant, and I think that's what keeps it so fresh, because you don't have to have it I mean, there is a structure to it, don't get me wrong, but it can still within that structure do so many things.
So Doctor Who basically jumped genres.
Totally.
Okay, that I am going to have to get into that because I love the idea of a story being told over time, which is why I prefer TV series over movies.
Mhm.
It's like in The Walking Dead. That's one great big long story.
Yeah.
You can't do what they do in a 2 hour show.
Then every season has an arc, a different arc, but there is one that lasts a number of years, and it doesn't weigh down the show at all. But it's the background that we don't know of the Doctor, and it's interesting because to new viewers, it's a mystery, just a mystery. To us older viewers, it's more of like there's been a massive shift in this character. What happened? And it's believable, and it doesn't, I mean, it's really well done. It made everything so good for the series.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to try to get a hold of some of these series, and I'm going to have a lot of catching up to do. They've been doing this thing for 40 years when you put it all together.
Yeah, well, if you start with 2005, which I really do recommend, is the first episode called Rose. If you start there, you only have we're looking at going to be 14 series. So you got plenty of time. You're
Yeah,
fine. You can whip that on a weekend. You're good.
probably. That's another thing that surprises me, confused me at first until okay, this is how they do it because with the difference between America and the UK is that we call it seasons,
Yeah.
they call each year a series, but we call the whole TV show and all of the seasons together as a series, but they do 1 year as a series.
They do. And to make confuse it even more, if we call something the classic series, the 1963 to 1989, and they lump in that TV movie as well, those were called seasons. They called those seasons. And now they're calling them series. So people are like, okay, you have a season one, which is 1963, and then you have a series one, which is 2005, and it's confusing. It is a confusing way of doing it, but for us, it's some people and someone. It's funny. I don't ever talk about Doctor Who like anyone asking me about it. But Jeremy, apart from Friday, I was also on a radio show on Monday talking about Doctor Who. And Matt, who interviewed me, he's a big fan, and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, I remember when something happened in season 37." And I'm thinking to myself, I don't think of it that way. I look at it as a season and then series. So I'm like, what the hell is season 37? I don't even know what that is. It's everyone has their own way of approaching what they call these
Well,
seasons of series.
well, over here in America, that's how we've been conditioned. I guess you could say
Yeah.
we've been conditioned that every year is a season.
Yes. Yes. And the thing too is like when you look at something like Are You Being Served or something, over here we'll have, like, for a sitcom, we'll have 24 episodes, or 20 some episodes at least, and in the UK a series will be about 6 episodes.
Really?
And that's but generally they're 6 pretty darn good episodes, and they also always have the person who creates it generally is the writer to it, so it's really interesting how that works. Yeah.
Okay. Um, is there a reason why they went from season to series, or is that just like a shift in the entire European Hollywood thing?
No, what ended up happening, I believe, is that the season thing, I think they always, I mean, I think there's paperwork to back up that the BBC was calling Doctor Who by seasons, even as in the 60s and 70s, but certainly there was a book written in the US by an author by the name of Jean-Marc Leffissier, was the Doctor Who program guide, and he was based in the US. And so he wrote it by season, and I think it caught up there because everything else in the UK throughout time is called series. So when the UK started making Doctor Who again with in 2005, they went with what everyone else in the UK calls it and called it a series.
Okay. With Doctor Who, have they tried to do crossovers with other TV shows?
So it's yes and no. Mainly like in comic books. Like there was a comic book, an official comic book that had like the Next Generation cast. Like it was a Next Generation Star Trek Next Generation universe story that had the Doctor in it, and that might have been a Matt Smith. Sorry, you don't even know who I'm talking about. 11th Doctor. I'm thinking out loud. But then there's been spin-offs for Doctor Who, and there's been a lot of crossover with that. And it's I think that there might be more because you may or may not know Doctor Who, when it comes back in November of this year, it will be exclusive in America and everywhere else in the world except the UK on Disney Plus. And so I
Wow.
think what's going to happen is that, and people don't believe me for some unknown reason, but what's going to happen, and you can trust me on this, that there's going to be spin-offs and they're going to try to build it out like the Marvel universe, like Star Wars, like, that's why else would Disney want it? Russell wants to make, because Russell Davis is back as showrunner again, and he wants to turn it into a big universe of stuff. So it's an exciting time, and I think there's going to be a lot of crossovers. If it's not even Doctor Who, the main show, having crossovers, I can almost guarantee that there's going to be some kind of crossover with any spin-offs, with maybe something else in the Disney Plus universe, possibly. I mean, I don't see why that's not an option, why that couldn't be an option. So
Yeah, and trying to create a universe. What Marvel did is just brilliant the way that they did it.
yeah.
When DC did it, to me, I think they ultimately failed in doing that. Because I think that they tried to do too much all at one time, whereas Marvel took their time and
Yeah.
let everything build up to the first Avengers.
Yeah.
Whereas DC, they did Superman. Then all of a sudden, we got Superman versus Batman, and brought all of them in together, the Justice League, before even giving each one of them their own vehicle to go to Justice League.
And I am certainly not versed on the Marvel universe, but what I see from the outside is, from an outsider looking in, it seems to me that what's missing on the DC stuff is the adventure of fun that the Marvel stuff just inherently has. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm more partial to the Marvel stuff anyway. I'm a big Spider-Man fan, just what I grew up with. It doesn't mean that the other side isn't a great thing, but I mean, to me it just seemed like that, like all the Batman, I mean, everything Batman is always and always will be like laced in doom and gloom and anger and angst, where Spider-Man also had a death, that propelled him to be Spider-Man, but yet he's always had an adventure of fun, a spirit of fun to him, and I think a lot of the Marvel stuff has that as well.
When I was growing up, it was always Batman for me.
Sure.
Um, and even the original Batman movies, I really enjoyed, despite the fact that it's really dark. I do enjoy dark movies,
Yeah.
but when they started working on the DC universe, it was like they tried to go overboard on the darkness.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I know that like Aquaman was a uh pretty big hit for DC, and I know Wonder Woman was, and but now you're hearing like there's all sorts of turmoil with, like, are they going to have Gale back as Wonder Woman? Are they going, they don't want Henry as Superman.
Yeah, I just saw something about that today. And Ernie, I can't guarantee that we're going to be talking about vampires, but we can try to throw some. Oh, okay, all right, vampire. So you were talking about Doctor Who skipping genres, doing scary stuff in it. Did they bring vampires into the show?
Oh my God, yes. And they've done it in a number of different ways, whether it's, and here's the thing, okay, and I think this is where Doctor Who has a really strong a strong arm in it, is that, you think of vampires, it's going to be some earth series, like a story set on Earth. No, like the first vampire story that I think of for Doctor Who is a story called State of Decay, and it takes place not only on another planet, but in another universe. But it's the whole vampire folklore that plays out in there, and there's still a gothic horror to it. But
Wow.
and that's the kind of the cool thing about Doctor Who. Yeah, and it kind of shows one of the things that like the Doctor talks about quite a bit is like it doesn't matter where you are, this kind of folklore and these kind of legends exist everywhere in the universe. They create their own version of it, and that's where you can really have a different takes on some very classic things. And there's another one from the Matt Smith era from 2010 called The Vampires of Venice, and that does take place in the past on Earth in Venice, and it's just beautifully shot and just a beautiful story. And that's where it's like, wow, these are just amazing stories.
If they can go back and forth through time and also go back and forth through space and even beyond space, you could have an infinite number of episodes.
And they have.
Yeah, I've
sure have.
I'm looking at the stats right now. They are just shy of 900 episodes.
Yeah.
No. There's 97 that are missing.
There are 97 that are missing. And that's one of my favorite aspects of Doctor Who. I mean, what I like about Doctor Who is being a television buff as I am. Doctor Who to me is the history of television, because it has lasted so long. It reflects all the variations of how the BBC made television series, from back in 1963, where it was almost like a show done live, to now where it is, shot in, 4K, and that it's now going to have millions of dollar budget because it's working with Disney. It's just such an amazing thing. But in the 1960s, they were all shot on videotape, these big 2-inch videotapes. And when they were done for sales purposes, so they can go all around the US, all around the world, sell them all around the world, they made film copies. And they sent out those film copies to like African stations and stations in Australia and New Zealand, and not America, though, in the 60s, not America. But while those are out there, the original videotapes were wiped and reused, and not all the film copies ever came back. So there's a number of episodes that are missing. And I find it very fascinating that some of the stuff is probably still out there. Well, I know that for a fact. Hopefully sometime that will come to light, the stuff that I know. But it's out there, and it's a matter of whether or not people can find them and stuff. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Oh yeah, no, Chuck knows it's my favorite subject. It's back in 10 years ago, there was let's see, like 9 episodes were found. And that was such a big deal, and it's just so exciting because you just get to see something new for the first time that has been around for 50-55 years, but now we get to see it. So
I imagine that finding the missing episodes of Doctor Who would be about the same level as finding some of the lost films from back in the 1910s and 1920s.
that's exactly it. And when on occasion those silent films still get found, that to me, and a lot of us Doctor Who fans and just British television fans in general, it's like, well, there's hope. If something from there, like if London After Midnight gets found, I think anything can get found. The fact that Metropolis got the full from in Argentina, they found the entire print that had been thought to be lost for 70 years. It's like, oh wow.
Exactly what you're talking about, because I actually have Metropolis on DVD in a collection.
Me too. I have it like 3 times. One of them being the Maroda version from the 80s that has all of like the Queen soundtrack and stuff to make it it's a great film, and I love silent films. I have a massive collection of them, and they're so great.
That show is so for me, it was so unusual because the sets that they made for that show seem like it's so over the top, but yet very spacious.
Very spacious. I mean, there's something about, and there's so much that in those silent films that make everything is on a scale that is massive. And we all remember that it's all practical effects. All of it's practical effects. You know,
Yeah.
obviously, I mean, there, and that's the thing that is so amazing. I just love it. I just love
Yeah,
it.
because I have like I want to say 4 or 5 silent films. It was in a collection called Nine Classic Horror Movies,
Yep.
and one of them is Metropolis, one of them is Nosferatu.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
The German version of Dracula. Absolutely. There. Now we're talking vampires again, Denise. You know, I mean, this is actually your show that we are doing this for you. We know you don't want to spend time with Ernie, so we are, trying to keep you, away.
Actually, right now, well, I think she's taking this month off. Because I know that she'd been coming up to Indianapolis for work, and
Mhm.
then she was having to take a month off, and I think it's February that she's taking off. I'm not
Okay.
really sure. But something that Ernie and Denise did say, I would like to do a show where we have a panel on people talking about the Marvel universe. I would like to do that because I love the Marvel universe and how they did that and made their standalone what they seem to be standalone movies, and then later on intertwine that together not only with the Marvel, I'm sorry, the Avengers movies,
Mhm.
but also in other standalone movies like Doctor Strange. He's had 2 of his own movies, but he's been in what 10?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's and to get back to British real fast, you have Benedict Cumberbatch in there, and
Yeah,
he you probably don't know. I mean, the show that launched his career was one called Sherlock, and it was a modern take on Sherlock Holmes, a BBC program that was created by the showrunner for Doctor Who at the time, Stephen Moffat, and one of its most prolific writers, Mark Gatiss. And that was
Sherlock himself in the show.
Benedict is Sherlock, and the whole thing is like the stuff that Arthur Conan Doyle wrote about in the 1800s. That doesn't exist. It all happens in the 21st century. So it is beautifully shot. It includes a ton of wonderful like graphics that it just you have to watch it, and it is a very 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 good program. It's one of yeah, I think it's one of the best BBC programs ever made, to be honest.
Well, I would definitely like to see that because I'm a fan of Benedict, and just in the way that he presents himself through his movies.
Yep.
Not only in Doctor Strange, but he was downright evil in the Star Trek show.
Yeah,
With,
when he was Khan,
yeah,
and so you have him as Sherlock, and then you have as Watson Martin Freeman, who had been in Fargo now, and he's been in a lot of other things. I don't follow his career quite as closely, but as Chuck says on here, is an easy watch. Sherlock is an easy watch and a binge worthy series, and it truly is. Oh, thank you, Brad. Bilbo Bimbo Baggins. Bilbo Baggins is Martin.
Sherlock. Sherlock would be an easy in for me because I love mystery.
Yeah.
I absolutely love mystery, no matter what aspect of it, whether if it's a Sherlock or like Monk, Matlock.
Oh, I love Monk. Oh my God, yes.
So any of those Murder She Wrote, that's one of my all
Yeah.
time favorites.
No, I remember seeing the DVD sets.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, even like stuff like Diagnosis Murder, any of that stuff, and it's just all so good.
Yeah, I was going to say that is the next series. Then I'm going to be after Diagnosis Murder. Recently, I got Father Down
Oh,
Mysteries.
I love that too.
Yeah.
Tom Bosley,
Hmm.
and what's her Tracy Nelson, right?
I don't recall.
Yeah, it's Tracy Nelson because she's the sister to the
That ran
twin.
around with it. Yeah.
Yep, and Matlock is coming back, and
Wait, what?
Yeah, with what Chuck? Who is it? What's her face from Pets? From
I was just telling somebody the other day, it's fine that they remake some of these old classics, but leave Matlock alone. I was just telling somebody that the other day.
Kathy Bates. Thank you, Chuck.
Oh,
Kathy. Now, just so people don't get weirded out, I just put my water in this big bottle. It's just water. Don't worry about it, folks. It just pours like water. So just everyone relax.
right now I know about Night Court. I've actually never seen their shows, but I'm familiar with it. Now, Kathy Bates, I'm I'm going to guess she's taking the.
She's Matlock.
Okay, that would be different because I am a huge fan of Kathy Bates. So if anybody would do Matlock justice, I think Kathy Bates would be one of the very few people who could do that.
What was shoot? What's the Stephen King film that she did?
She did several. She was in Misery.
Misery. Because
Was Claiborne.
That's right. And well, Misery reminds me of one of my favorite movie stories. Is you've seen Misery, obviously, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, I've seen them all.
And so there's that moment when the sheriff is looking in, like making sure everything's okay, and then he gets blown away from the torso, and it comes out at us. And there was someone sitting next to me in the aisle, and it blows up, and it scares all of us. But the guy next to me goes, "Holy shit!" and he gets up and he runs out of the theater. I think he thought that the screen exploded, to be honest. And he never came. At least he never came back to his seat. And maybe he stayed in the back row.
He actually ran out from that scene, but he didn't run out from the scene when she bashed in his ankles.
Well, no, because my guess is because we see it like we're looking at it, but it looks like honestly when his stomach blows out, you kind of wonder, did the screen blow up at us or something? Yeah.
But yeah, I am a big fan of Kathy Bates, so I think she would be one of the few that would do Matlock justice.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And Matlock is my ex-wife was a big fan of all these programs, so that's why I know about all of them. Like also like Psych from USA. Do you remember Psych?
Yeah. If they did a 3D show of any of Stephen King's movies, that would be.
Well, and just to bring it back to Doctor Who, there was a 3D episode of Doctor Who. So
okay, how did that one? How was that?
That was really cool. And what's funny about that was that it's called Day of the Doctor. But I had and you're not gonna understand. Yeah, Psych was great. You're not gonna understand these people's names, but when the Doctor was the new Doctor Who was released in 2010 with a brand new Doctor called Matt Smith. I worked for a company that we did all the media stuff for Subaru. So they were going to do an Apple Store meet and greet with Matt Smith, who was the new Doctor. And I asked, because we show stuff on BBC America, I'm like, do you think I can get in on that? And they actually created a special happy hour with my friend Robert, myself, Matt Smith, someone else named Karen Gillan from Doctor Who, and Stephen Moffat, and we just sat around and had drinks together for like 20 minutes. And Stephen Moffat said, he said, what's missing in Doctor Who is a 3D episode. And then 2 years later, he did a 3D episode of Doctor Who, which was kind of cool.
Now, with the different Doctor Who's that they've had, they didn't do this until recently when they came in with the first female Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And I remember reading about that when they were getting ready to start that particular series.
Mm-hmm. And
there were a lot of people against it because Doctor Who had always been like an older white gentleman.
That was kind of an ugly part of the history of Doctor Who in terms of fandom, of people not wanting to like the show because it's a woman playing the role instead of a man. And to your point, Jeremy, it had been, let's see, at that point we had 12 white actors, and not all of them were old. Some of them were in their 20s, but there was something to be said about we're in a more enlightened world now. why don't we have a more enlightened, because Doctor Who is a safe place. The core premise of Doctor Who, whether it be action, adventure, and everything else, is that everyone gets treated equal. Everybody deserves to be heard and loved, and that they should not be feared and whatever else. So when people are getting upset because there is now a woman as the character of the Doctor, it was very sad, because people never let go of that. There's some that never let go of it, and I think it is fair to say that it's not the most successful period of the show's history. And so what ends up happening is, and some of this is conjecture on my part, but what ends up happening is that the Jodie Whittaker era is not going quite as well ratings wise, and the BBC asks the original showrunner I talked about, Russell T Davies, to come back, and suddenly things start to come into its own, where now they're on Disney Plus and things are looking very bright. And actually one of the past doctors is now back as the current doctor for a little bit before it passes on to a man of color named Ncuti Gatwa.
Notice that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ncuti Gatwa is.
So what kind of surprises me? Granted, I get with wanting to keep everything old school, but the concept of the Doctor jumping from body to body to body is that he could literally be anybody.
Yep. Yep.
Male, female, black, white, Mexican.
Absolutely. And that's kind of the point. And there's a part of Doctor Who now that kind of makes it like there are many more doctors that we know about. And personally, that's not a plot point that I'm a big fan of myself, but it's out there. But the thing is, and that's kind of the funny thing about Doctor Who in some fandom circles is, like I said, Doctor Who could be literally about anything, could be literally about anyone, but yet there's some fans who only want to see it a certain way. Back in the 80s in particular, there's people who like, I want Doctor Who should be the Gothic series that I remember watching. Well, that only was like just a tiny fraction of what the series really was. It's like that might be your favorite part, but it could be so much more. And that's the thing that I feel kind of bad that fans don't quite realize that, because you miss out, I think, quite a bit.
The way that I see is that at least now. Back then, I don't know how it was then, but at least now, everybody is always wanting something new. Something to make everything fresh. But if you want it to stay the same, how are you going to get that? You're contradicting yourself.
Right. And you're doing the show a disservice when it can be literally about anything. And you're just, all you're doing is having the Doctor fight the same monsters all the time, when there's so much more that could be created and figured out. I gotta catch that.
In hindsight, would it be fair to say that maybe back then, when they were going from doctor to doctor, maybe with the second doctor, they should have gone to a woman so that they would know right off the bat, oh, that's how it's going to be from now on?
Sadly, I think it would have killed the show. The second Doctor came in 1966. The BBC was such a misogynistic entity, which is odd to say because the very first producer of Doctor Who was a woman. But the idea of a female lead of any kind, whether Doctor Who or anything, was not met very well. I mean, the closest you might get might be something like, I don't know if you ever heard of the British series The Avengers, where you have someone like Diana Rigg as a big, she wasn't a star, but she was a big part of it. And I see Linda says Star Trek came out in 1966, but someone like Uhura was not the star of the show. She was she was part of the cast. She still was a big groundbreaker, but
she wasn't
the star. It was still men that were stars of these shows.
She wasn't the star, but the way that they had her is like she was not what your quintessential female actor would be doing.
No, she certainly did so much more. And the problem was, as much as I'm like, well, Doctor Who was about all inclusive and everything, some of those female companions well into the 80s were nothing more than, damsel in distress, screaming and yelling. And, there's once in a while you'd get some that were really groundbreaking, smart, that they were problem solvers on their own. But, when you had like some of the main writers who looked at companions as all we want this companion to do is hand equipment to the doctor and ask the questions that the viewer is going to ask, like, what is it, what is that monster, what is happening now, to kind of move the plot along. And it, so for so long it was always kind of like the doctor was all knowing, so to speak, but everyone else was just the ones asking questions. When the series came back in 2005, suddenly some people complained that it was more about the companions and the doctor, and I don't agree with that. But you certainly got a lot more breadth of character exposition than you ever had before, and a lot of the story arcs were about the companions almost more than the doctor, and it was really pretty cool to see how they handled all that.
Well, just like in a lot of other shows that we have seen, where yeah, you do have your top star, but let say Family Matters, for example. Carl Winslow, yeah, he was the top name,
Yeah,
but the person that really made the show was Stephen Urkel.
absolutely. Though it's have you seen those Progressive commercials with him in it now? Have you?
I've seen a commercial with Carl Winslow in it.
Yep.
Him and the two dads.
Yep.
I don't know if that was Progressive or not.
It's Progressive. They're doing an ad campaign called the TV Dads, and I've seen two with him, and so check it out. It's funny. It's very funny.
It is, and it's funny how Carl will say, "Well, when you're a dad, you'll understand," and the other guy's like, "I am
his dad. I am his dad."
Chuck, something that you said that I want to come back to after this next one. Now that you brought it up, talking about the companions, I was going through the list, and I've seen that, like you were saying, most of them predominantly have been women.
Yep.
And then it switched when they had the female Doctor Who, and it went to men. And then I noticed, like in the last couple of years of her being the Doctor, they had female doctors. Now, before I looked it up, I thought, by companion, I was thinking, okay, this is the Doctor's lover. And
yes, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, because that is it's a very important point in my book.
Yeah, and the only reason I know anything about companions is because I am a big, big fan of Billie Piper, and I know she was one of the companions.
Yes, yeah, and the thing about, like, for Jodie Whittaker, the last Doctor, the female Doctor, throughout her run, the constant was this character named Yaz, and a female, and who Yaz fell in love with the Doctor. And I think they missed a huge piece there by not having them in some way romantically involved to some extent. I mean, Doctor Who never gets really totally involved with anybody, but I think that the whole purpose of that era, at least as far as there was a preview when Jodie started of her standing around, and there was a glass ceiling and it shatters around her. And so obviously the first thing you think of is like,
that's actually quite appropriate.
It was. And so you think, wow, there's going to be some changes here. And I think one of the things that Jodie's era really missed was really celebrating the fact that Jodie was the first female Doctor, whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to be like, feminine, but I mean, there needed to be something there that really took advantage of this unique, wonderful moment. And one of them was that they created this storyline that Yaz was in love with the Doctor. And sorry, folks, spoilers if you don't want to know, is that it goes nowhere. I mean, Yaz is there when Jodie's final story, and really all it ends up doing is that they go out and get ice cream, literally at the end before she goes and regenerates. And it's a very big missed moment, I think, because that really, and this goes back to when I was doing hosting at the convention a couple weeks ago, when a woman asked a question to one of the stars that I was interviewing and said, "Do you think Ace was bi?" And Sophie said, "Yes."
I saw that name, Ace.
Ace was back in 1987 to 89. And Sophie, who played the character, she said that is completely possible. And when people are able to see their heroes being able to have the same lifestyles or entertain the same lifestyles that they have, that means so much to them. And I just feel like it's such a missed opportunity. It's very unfortunate. I think it was a huge mistake not to give us some kind of payoff like that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at this list here, the different companions, and they switch companions either quite often, or it seemed like there were more than one companion at the same time.
Yep.
So it wasn't like a Sherlock and Watson thing. It was like a Sherlock and 3 or 4 Watsons.
It truly, and I think one of the reasons is that a doctor generally stays in a role for anywhere between 2 to 3 to 5 years, roughly. And the idea is that they last for 100 some years, each doctor. And so if you have one character stay with them the entire time, it looks like that, this character is also 100 and some years old. And so like later on, when the new series, they kind of avoided that by dropping off these companions at the end of a story, picking them up maybe in the next story. But the idea is that a number of years have passed between the time that they'd seen him. So it kind of gives a little bit more depth to the character being around for so long.
Okay. I've gone through the names here, and hardly any I recognize except for Billy Piper.
Yep.
And then when it comes to the doctors, somebody mentioned Dave Tennant.
David Tennant, yep.
Who was in one of the Harry Potter movies.
Yes, he was. He was in the 4th one. Yep.
Yes. And then I looked up Matt Smith.
Oh, yeah.
Turned out he was not the Matt Smith that I was thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were a couple other doctors, I forget which one, that actually looked familiar, but I didn't really know their name.
Yeah.
But the face looked familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know throughout Hollywood, there's a lot of shows out there that have had British actors come in, and sometimes in lead parts, sometimes not, but their face is very familiar.
Yeah.
Bart Crouch, yes, Chuck. But yeah, and the thing about the companions, missed opportunities as to whether they become a lover or not. With the kind of job that the doctor has, wouldn't it make it really, really difficult for him or her to be able to have some sort of a sustainable relationship?
And that is exactly what the reason generally is. It's just too much. And that's what the 13th Doctor, Jodie Whittaker, gave to Yaz. Like, it's just, my life is not one that can sustain a relationship. And other doctors have said, like David Tennant had said to Billy Piper, Rose and the Doctor, like, I live so much longer than humans that all I'm going to do is everyone dies eventually. My point is, and I'm not a big proponent of the Doctor having a relationship of any kind, sexually or whatever else, even though in my opinion, it is highly hinted at in the David Tennant and Billy Piper era. But the thing is I think a good message to people who are unsure about their own sexuality, and that they see, the Doctor having a same-sex relationship. I just think that it's a great message for people who are unsure or want to have that sort of confirmation of feeling good about themselves. That's just my opinion on that, though.
I know that in regards of my life is too hectic to have a relationship, that has been explored in many other shows.
Yeah.
And the way that Doctor Who sounds like is that it would be perfect for that. Now, on Doctor Who, do they ever say what Doctor Who's first name is, or if Who is even his actual last name?
Yeah, that is always, that's like a mystery, right? That's a mystery of who Doctor Who is, literally. Um, and I think I want to say that it was said, as whether it's a joke or not, by a character named Missy in one of the last Peter Capaldi episodes, but it never really gets said. In fact, River, I think River Song, as Brad had brought up, a character named River Song, who actually was married to the Doctor. Talk about continuity and talk about getting things out of control. Um, she knew his first name, and that's how she, to make matters confusing, Jeremy. I mean, and you might as well, if you feel free to just turn like me off the live if this gets too annoying. The Doctor meets River Song before after she's been married to him and had a life with him, and before he even knows her, if that makes sense. But so he doesn't believe anything she says. But the thing that um that convinces him that she knows who he is, that she tells him secretly, we don't hear it, his first name. And so he knows that this is, and she shows up in a number of episodes afterwards. As Chuck says, he meets her at the end, literally at the end. And I won't say any more than that, but it's, that's where time is. And that's kind of the fun thing too, is that you're meeting sometimes characters at different parts. The doctor, because you're seeing it from the Doctor's point of view, and you're meeting these characters out of order, and eventually it all comes together.
Yeah, that does sound confusing. Yeah, Denise, I'm looking I'm looking at it right now. So Ernie sent me a picture.
It's
Of
him, isn't it? Him wearing a Spider-Man costume. I know it is, and I don't know
no,
if I want to see that.
it's not. It's actually with the guy who was the Winter Soldier in Marvel, and she is standing beside him, and he has a sign next to him, "Help me." That's that's funny. That is funny. Um, now now with Doctor Who, and Chuck brought this up of another time traveling TV series, Quantum Leap, and they were running at the same time, and it seems to me that there would have been a great opportunity to have those two meet at some point because they're traveling through time.
Absolutely. The realistic part of it, of course, is that in the '80s, when the original series ran, you had the BBC was trying to kill off Doctor Who at that point in some ways, and NBC was just, and as you know, Jeremy, that stuff just didn't happen at the time. Now that they're both back on, I mean, I can't imagine it happening, but what do I know? I mean, that's the thing. Now people expect that sort of thing. We're back then. The climate was is that us fans would be like, that'd be pretty cool, but never in a million years would it happen. It's amazing how television has changed over the course of the last 40
Oh
years.
yeah, oh yeah, big time for the good and for the bad.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
So in the late '80s, was Doctor Who's popularity going down? Were the ratings going down, or was BBC just had enough of doing it after so many years?
I really think it's more of that the BBC had enough. So it some might think it got stale. I'm such a fan that I don't see it. But then there was an actor by the name of Sylvester McCoy that became the Doctor, and this is my opinion. This is not fact. This is my opinion that when he came on as the Doctor, and they had a new script editor, they had a kind of new breath of fresh air, that the series felt much unique and much more like it hasn't been that alive in a while. And then you started kind of turning continuity on its head a little bit. This is truly the start of where we are now, just with how continuity works in these long running film franchises and series and stuff. And Doctor Who was starting to do that because we had younger people running parts of the show, where now we started to kind of go back in the Doctor's history, and in his own time, like a story called Remembrance of the Daleks, where it takes the Doctor back to where the very first episode took place. And to your point earlier, Jeremy, kind of taking kind of stop and changing what we knew about established history at the time. And there's a lot of that stuff happening, which now is commonplace in these programs, especially something like Futurama, where they're always going back to the beginning of like the story with Fry and everything else. But so they would put it up against like the most popular soap opera in the UK, which was Coronation Street on another network, and it was doing not great ratings, but against a powerhouse like that, it was doing really well actually. But it was a reason for getting rid of the series. And the decision to get rid of the series actually happened about 5 years beforehand. It was canceled once. The fans wanted it back, so they brought it back. But then the idea had always been, we'll bring back the series, but we are only going to let it go for a little while longer and then kill it off again. And that's exactly what happened.
That has actually happened with a number of TV shows, like, because I remember that happened with Futurama. They killed it.
Mm-hmm.
Fans backlash. Hey, okay, we're bringing it back.
Yep, and it's coming back again because it was on Fox. It was canceled. It came back on Sci-Fi, if I'm not mistaken, and didn't it die again and come back on Comedy Central for a little bit, or they just reran episodes on Comedy Central? I could be wrong. Now it's coming back on Hulu.
Wow.
Same with King of the Hill that was just announced. So, which I love.
Yeah, I was surprised about King of the Hill as well, and yeah, it's like, okay, we're trying to kill this off, but yet they never tried to kill off Simpsons. At least to my knowledge, they never did. It's been straight running every single year.
Yep.
But
see, I'm one of those people though that don't think it's bad. I'm one of those people that, yeah, it's not like how when Conan O'Brien was writing episodes, it's certainly or was producer. I get it. It's not that caliber, but every episode I'm finding myself laughing out loud at some stuff. And I think now Fox is kind of like, you know what? We know this is the longest running TV show of all time. We'll just let it go, and we'll cancel it when it's, or let them finish it when they want to finish it, because it's not going to last forever.
I think they're actually going to try to surpass Bonanza as the longest running show.
Surely Simpsons is longer than Bonanza.
How long has Bonanza?
Or Gunsmoke as well. I think Simpsons is the longest running.
Gunsmoke is what I'm thinking. One of them was about 30 years, wasn't it?
Well, and right now Simpsons is going. It's scheduled to run through its 36th season.
Oh, okay. No, that's far beyond that then.
Yeah.
Okay. You can kill it off at any time you got the record.
Yeah, and they're going to hit 900 some episodes when they get through it all. So it's kind of like, let it go and get to 1,000 episodes. I don't think obviously nothing's gotten to 1,000 episodes apart from like soap operas and stuff. So
yeah, you're not going to touch soap operas.
No.
I don't know how they do that.
I never understood either.
And I've been saying the same thing for any wrestling fans right now, with Roman Reigns being the Universal Champion. When WrestleMania comes around, that'll be around 940 some days. Go to 1,000. Let him lose the title next year.
Yeah.
Go to 1,000. You're almost there. Don't end it now.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to Doctor Who. I'm looking on the description of everything, but I don't see anything where, if they've ever revealed where he was from, or if they had done a show where he'd gone back to his home planet to do something.
You've done a lot of research, and you've gone, and it's been really good. But with this one, we've gone back to his home planet a number of times. Yep, and he comes from a planet called Gallifrey. He's a Time Lord, and the term Gallifrey, it took 11 seasons before we knew the name of his home planet. And so that was in 1973. You know, that just goes to show how long it took to kind of get some of this information out. Gallifrey and the Time Lords play a very big part in the new series, if you will, the 2005 stuff. I won't ruin it, but that's a big part of everything, and that's a big part of the narrative when the series comes back.
Now, is it even in the same universe as Earth, or as we know it on the show?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, with Time Lords, I would guess that they would have some sort of a directive where, like how on some shows it's like, okay, you can go back in time, you can do whatever, observe, but don't affect anything. Where let's say we go back in time and we stop Hitler and stop World War II, and then when we come back to today, everything is so much worse than what it had been.
Absolutely. That's the first law of time.
Sort of a directive on that.
It's the first law of time with the Time Lords. And the thing about the Time Lord Society is that not every Time Lord time travels. That they are very much like it's meant for special reasons, and especially earlier in the series that it really came across as this is not something to mess around with, and that the Doctor actually, the whole purpose, what we find out why the Doctor wasn't on his planet originally, is that he escaped, that he left Gallifrey because they had no sense of adventure, and what he had a curious mind. He wanted to be able to explore the universe, not change it, but explore it. And so he stole the TARDIS, which is a time machine, and he went off on his own adventures, and they finally caught up with him at some point. So so granted, that gets messy over time because every series that's gone on for 3,000 years is going to play with those constructs, but generally that's what it is. And to the point that there is an episode with David Tennant that he knows the outcome of the lives of the people he's trying to work with. He knows that they die. He knows this the whole time, and he snaps, and he's basically, he says, screw this, I'm going to save them. And that's when he calls himself Time Lord Victorious, and that ends up being like, he's like, I can do whatever I want. I can change time. I can do what I want. And it doesn't last very long, but that's a massive shift in the character and massive shift in the narrative of when you can time travel and what you can do with time travel. It's very cool, actually. I love it. It's called Waters of Mars. I think it's fantastic.
It actually reminds me of some of the captains on Star Trek where they basically ignore the prime directive because they're doing what they feel is right and what really is right.
Yeah. It's no different than in the episode of oh shoot, I can't think of it, where in the original series when Spock pretty much steals the Enterprise to get Captain Pike. The menagerie,
which was actually the original pilot to the series.
The Cage. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And also with that kind of narrative, one could say that in the eyes of authority within the show, that Doctor Who is actually a fugitive.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. I mean, and that's just it. I mean, and I don't want to give away too much with how the new series goes because it gets a little convoluted, it gets a little messy, but certainly in the original series from 63 to 89, he was a fugitive, and then he was kind of a sort of an agent for the Time Lords, not one that he wanted to be, but he was kind of forced to be on occasion, and then he was given back his freedom for a while, It was always kind of that sort of love-hate relationship with his own people.
So you could say he's almost like the anti-hero.
That's exactly what he is. He always has been. And especially early on, the very first Doctor could be kind of grumpy, could be kind of, kind of abrasive, but at the end of the day, he always wanted to do the right thing. But it wasn't like, sometimes he had to because he knew that that's the only way that he could survive. That's the only way he could live. Very, very early on, that's the way they portrayed the character sometimes.
So have they established that Time Lords have a life expectancy, or are they more the immortal type?
It's a good question, and this is where you take canon, and sometimes you have a head canon opposed to canon. And so where I'm coming from, originally the idea was that there was only 12 times the Doctor could regenerate, 13 lives. And
Like,
yep, and that was the classic series. But then the show became very successful, and so we reached that expectancy, and the Doctor is apparently given a whole new life cycle, and regenerates into the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi.
okay, so real quick on that, when he goes from body to body, does the old body just dies or evaporates, or something? Or is there anything left of the old body?
Nothing left. It's like literally, in the new series, they hold out their arms and a lot of fire comes out of them. And when the fire goes away, it's a new actor wearing the old actor's clothes.
Okay, so it's not like, let's say they start the new series. It's not like they can bring the guy that played the old Doctor back in and do like a tongue in cheek kind of thing.
No, not really. No. Um, but what we find out during the Jodie Whittaker era, and I'm not going to get too deep into it because it's a lot of continuity, and if anyone wants to see it, I don't want to ruin it. But it really comes down to it. In my mind, it's a very Marvel sort of thing where the Doctor's role in his and hers own universe becomes much more focused, and it becomes more clear in this new world that the Doctor doesn't have a limit on how many regenerations that they can have, and in fact there are literally an infinite number of them
Okay.
now. And that's just something I personally cannot take, and I don't really buy it. And I would bet any money that the new showrunner coming back, Russell, when he comes back and does Doctor Who, it's called the Timeless Child storyline, that will all be ignored. I am fairly certain of that when Russell comes back, because Russell is much more of a purist with the series, and I don't think he's going to really buy into that. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't know any privileged information. It's just my gut.
Okay. Now, with all TV series, when you have a hero or anti-hero in this case, they almost always have that one main villain.
Mm.
Just like MacGyver's got Murdoch. He may not necessarily be in every episode, but there's a story arc that spans across the entire, 6-7 years of that Doctor. Does Doctor Who have an equivalent to Murdoch?
Or Moriarty, right? Yes. There's a character called the Master who is also a Time Lord. And the Master has had many lives as well, and has made their way into the new series as well. There's also been a female version of it. Sometimes there's been a story where two of them have been in the same story, which has been really pretty awesome. And some are more successful than others, actors playing the role, but definitely there is that Moriarty sort of villain, arch villain. But the thing is, the Master has to be carefully used, because that character can so easily become pantomime, meaning it could be just kind of a more of a joke than something actually menacing, over the top, like the villain twisting their mustache, wearing the black long hat. It's so easy to parody that character. So you have to be very careful not to turn it into a stereotypical, villain, but rather something more interesting. So it's been there's been some successful versions of this character and some not quite as successful, but it's still kind of the yin and yang of the Doctor, and we don't know for certain. I mean, it's always been alluded to, but there hasn't really been anything like concrete. Are these two related somehow? Are there some sort of like, what is their connection to them? And there's been times over the course of the years that they were going to do something that connected them, like almost like brothers, but it's never really happened. So there's still a mystery about what is their real relationship.
Well, that actually kind of makes me think of Harry Potter and Voldemort.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
may not necessarily be related, but there is a very strong connection.
Mm-hmm.
One cannot live while the other survives. Something like that.
And there's been stories where and Brad's right, it's been said where they're once best friends, but I think there's always been a little bit more to it that they've always hinted at. And there was stories where, like, the David Tennant Doctor, he literally, like, he can't imagine, even though they're arch enemies, he can't imagine the Master dying. He can't imagine knowing that there is a world without the Master in it, a universe without the Master in it. So it's a very complex relationship, which is kind of fun to see play out.
Okay, and the thing about David Tennant, this is real interesting, is that he is the only person to be the Doctor on two separate occasions, two separate series, kind of, sort of.
It's complex. That's the thing about Doctor Who. Let's take yes. So mainly, David Tennant played the Doctor from 2006 to 2010, and he arguably the most successful actor to play the Doctor, even more so than Tom Baker. Some might say Tom Baker in the original series.
Is Tom Baker related to Colin Baker?
Nope, they're not related. Nope, okay. They're not related. So we get through the Jodie stuff, and she regenerates into David Tennant, and it's not the David Tennant Doctor from 2006 to 2010. And Chuck has a really good point that to confuse you even more. I don't even know what to do about that one. But so she regenerates back into him, but he is a new incarnation of the Doctor. And so
it's like he just happened to like that body and decided to do that again, or what?
Well, he doesn't know why he did that, because at the end of the episode, he's like, wait, what happened? And that's what we're going to try to find out. But my theory is why we got David Tennant is because these air as part of the anniversary for the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, and because Jodie wasn't maybe quite as successful, if I could say that word, successful, that they wanted someone who was super popular. Russell came back, and they're going to do some stories with him, and then hand it over to Ncuti, who is going to be the new Doctor, and who's also going to be, I think, wildly successful. I think he's going to be phenomenal. So Tennant has been in it 3 times. Do you have seatbelts, Jeremy? Because you might want to put them on for this. Or if you're going to fall asleep, one of the two. David Tennant's first story, he had his hand cut off, a la Luke Skywalker. And because he was so early on in his regeneration sequence that he grows a new hand. But the hand that falls to somewhere to Earth is picked up, and it is held by a time agent named by Captain Jack. And it's there for a while, and it shows back up eventually. I'm paraphrasing because we don't have all night.
I saw the name Captain Jack. He was one of the companions, wasn't he?
He was shortly a companion. Then he had his own spin-off called Torchwood.
Okay.
There's a point that the hand comes alive and regenerates itself into a full-size David Tennant, who is not a Time Lord, and ends up having a life with Billy Piper. And
so it's like one of those lizards that I used to see all the time in Florida. You could tear them in half, but it's like you can't kill them.
No, well, I mean, you shouldn't be killing animals, Jeremy. But I mean, I think you're like fair enough. But then also there is Tom Baker, who regenerated back in the early 80s, but on the 50th anniversary episode in 2010, he is back for just one scene, and he's not even called the Doctor, but it's heavily implied that he is. And he also implies that you're going to he's talking to Matt Smith, who's the current Doctor at that point. And he says, you're going to return to some familiar faces, the more popular ones, basically, which is very prophetic because, first of all, we all believe that Tom Baker in that scene was the Doctor, but also because now David Tennant is the Doctor again. I mean, if you know, I feel bad for you, Jeremy. This is a vomit of continuity that, you know, I mean, just start from 2005, you'll be fine. But
this is the thing that I like about TV shows, especially when it comes to mystery, is that I enjoy complex storylines. I really like the ones where, okay, you got to pay attention to this because if you blink, you're going to miss the whole town you're going through.
Well, and if you're a Doctor Who fan, when someone says "don't blink," that means a big thing. Just so you know, Jeremy, that's you're for not watching it, you're saying a lot of the right things. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, I'm basically going off of Wikipedia here, but at the same time, you know, I know how popular Doctor Who is.
Yes.
And I've heard, you know, little bits and pieces over the last almost 30 years of it.
Yeah.
So and plus, you know, I'm a big TV buff myself, but with something that I've never seen, I'm very interested in this.
I think you'd love it. I really do.
Yeah. So I definitely want to get into it because it sounds like, especially now that you're saying that they don't stay the same. It jumps genres. Yeah. That is a major turn on for me because I don't know of any other show that does that. You know, shows like Supernatural, yeah, they pull in all different kinds of myths and legends from thousands of years ago, but it's the same horror genre throughout. Mm-hmm. Same with Star Trek. It's sci-fi or Stargate. Yeah, you're going across and getting all different adventures, and every now and then, like in the case of Stargate, they have one show that you can definitively say this is a horror show.
This is what we should do, Jeremy. You know, you have your wrestling show, you have these shows. You should add one more show where you and you watch an episode a week or whatever, and we talk about what you learned and what you enjoyed about it. And
I would not be opposed to that.
Because I think that would be a lot of fun to talk through it. The hard part would be me keeping my mouth shut because there'd be like, oh my God, you just wait till blah, blah, blah happens. You know, oh my God, you know, it's 4 years down the line, but it's going to be totally worth it, you know, stuff like that. But I think that you would really enjoy it.
The way that I am, watching one episode a week is not going to happen. Watching one episode a day is not going to happen. I'll watch 4 or 5 of them in a day because sadly, I got that kind of time right now.
Well, and you know, if we did something, it could be once a series. You know, because like go through 13 episodes, and we do.
Now that I can do.
Yeah, we do a recap.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be. Well, right now it kind of is, but it wouldn't be all that difficult for me to watch one season or one series in a week. But lately, the last few days, I haven't even turned on my TV because I've been so busy doing other things, especially writing stories.
Yeah.
Which I was actually doing right up until time for the show. But yeah, I would not be opposed to doing like a recap show on Doctor Who or really any other.
Right.
TV series.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I do a lot of lives about Doctor Who and British television in general and stuff. And it's because, you know, I think, and this is why we do it for paranormal and stuff too. We like to be able to talk about what we love and be able to share it. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. That's really one of the reasons why I started doing that wrestling podcast with Donald Martin.
Yeah.
Because doing the same thing, and I've said this a million times by now, doing the same thing, it gets old. You know, I love the paranormal, but I don't want the paranormal to be my life.
Hmm.
The paranormal is a big part of my life, but I want other parts to be in my life too. Wrestling, gaming. Though I hadn't been able to do any games in the past week. Music, writing stories. I don't want to be typecast.
No, no, I get it.
Yeah.
No, I totally get it. And I mean, it's just fun to be able to, share passion. It's also fun to see new people watch the stuff and have different points of view and see things differently than I would, because I have very firm ideas about Doctor Who, and then have someone like you or other people who watch it different, from a long time ago, from the time it started, to have different revelations. I think that's the fun part of it.
Yeah, and I have seen some of the lives that you have done. I remember seeing like three or four of them where it's you and two other guys, and you're not talking about Doctor Who, but you are talking about BBC.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. And I do a show whenever new Doctor Who airs, that I bring my friends Mike and Robert, excuse me, and we
Those
just
are
go,
you guys, I think.
yeah, and we go through in the greatest of detail, including like TV listings and ratings and everything about the new stuff and our reactions. And the best part too is also, like, the comment section and other people's reaction, because I don't care about what I think, if that makes sense. I care more about the conversation, and maybe a lot of times people don't say things that I agree with, but doesn't mean they're wrong, doesn't mean I'm wrong. That's the whole point of it, to be able to have the
Yeah,
conversation.
and a lot of these guys have brought up some really good points. I know like Chuck has mentioned a few things. Brad has. So that's what I like, because they're actually in a way kind of helping me with this.
Well, and the funny thing is, like with Mr. Chuck over there, Chuck and I know each other through Doctor Who. That's what, we both share that, and that's, I think, how we became friends on Facebook. And Chuck, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, once I started doing like the paranormal stuff, like the spirit box and stuff, um, that is, I didn't know he had any interest in paranormal at all, and that's where I think true friends kind of we cross platform, right? It's not just about one thing. And Brad Webb is the other way, where we knew each other through paranormal, and then found out, oh my gosh, we both love Doctor Who. So that's the rewarding part of all this, or that Denise Pack is on here, and that she enjoys Doctor Who and Marvel. I don't know if she made that clear. That
Yeah, and
that she might have, she glossed over that bit, but
yeah, and that's the direction that I'm wanting to go with this show, because the original tagline is, if it's paranormal or beyond, we got it covered.
mm-hmm.
But the original concept was, okay, we're not going to talk about just hauntings, but cryptozoology, aliens. I'm taking it a step forward. Let's talk about your passion. And in a way, this is really the first show where we're talking about something that has absolutely nothing to do with the paranormal.
Right. Yet
Uh,
they've done a number of episodes that are ghost stories,
so that's why I'm really enjoying this one here, because we're talking about another thing that I love, TV shows, but I'm getting educated on a show I've never seen before.
Well, and I like it too that we're talking about, you're bringing up shows, and I know what you're talking about. You're talking about earlier shows. You're not, Father Dowling Mysteries. That's not something anyone really talks about on a daily basis. And I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's fun, because I may not have them like in my collection, but I love them. Like before Cindy Williams died, I've been on a big Laverne and Shirley kick. I've been really, and so her death this week was hugely impactful for me, because I went out and I bought the DVD set of all the episodes, because I just wanted to watch them again. And it's like, this stuff gets it's, the further away we get from it, the more lost it is. Like, to people when I was younger, it's like I Love Lucy that seemed ancient to me. Laverne and Shirley's contemporary. Now, when I talk to people like that are younger about Laverne and Shirley, they think of it the way that I think of like I Love Lucy.
Yep. Well, now, how like my dad, he would always talk about good old days. His good old days is the 50s.
Yeah.
My good old days now is the 90s.
Yeah, me too.
So eventually, today is going to be one of those good old days.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we're 80, 90 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's a very good point.
But the thing about the shows from back then is, I think Hollywood is kind of losing its touch in a way, because there's something intimate about the shows that we had back in the 80s. The Father Dowling Mysteries, Murder, She Wrote. There's something about the way that they did those characters and the people that they had, that they don't really capture that as well in today's show. Like Richard Dean Anderson when he was MacGyver,
Mm-hmm.
and Lucas Till, I think, who's MacGyver now, if that's the actor I'm thinking of. He does a good job at it, but the show as a whole, yeah, it's exciting because you got more action in it, more explosions, and more storylines. But there's something about the way that they did it then that is just so special.
It could be. I'm biased, so I feel like I can't really add. Like, I can't give an opinion on it, because I just think about like my dad dismissing something that I liked when I was younger that now we're talking about as being really good, if that makes any sense. That I understand that TV viewers have changed, and people like you and I, Jeremy, I think we're a bit of the dinosaurs. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it means that what we like, I love the slower paced stuff. I have no problem with it. Viewers today may want something a little bit more cuttier and a little bit more quicker. And maybe they don't.
Because Hollywood has kind of conditioned them that way.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think to myself, and I say this without ever actually seeing it, that you talk about Murder, She Wrote, and I thought to myself, I bet you anything that something like that Steve Martin Short mystery series of In the Apartment Building on Hulu, I bet that
going to check that out.
Me too, and I haven't. And then, of course, the British television series, shows like Midsummer Murders. There's a lot of British mystery series that are certainly not fast paced at all. And they're very, very good. And they're very British. Midsummer Murders is the name of a series that's been on for about 25, 26 years. And it does move methodically, not slow, methodically, right? That's the term we want to use. Yeah. And there's payoffs, and they're really good, and there's nothing wrong with that. And as Brad says, British mysteries are some of the best. I mean, Jeremy, if you've ever seen, we talked about Sherlock, but also seek out the 1980s Sherlock Holmes series that company called Granada did. It's phenomenal. It is absolutely wonderful. It's such a explosion. Jeremy Brett is Sherlock Holmes, and it's amazing.
Well, wasn't there a show that was just Watson?
Could be, but I wouldn't have watched that. No, I'm just kidding. But I never heard of that.
I want to say that there was a show that it focused on Watson.
I wouldn't be surprised.
But Watson was the central character.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So on Doctor Who, like you said, they did skip genre or jump around on genres. Did they do a bunch of murder mysteries? That might be what I'm thinking of. I'm not sure.
I think a lot. I mean, murder mystery, there might be a couple, but there's like one I think of off the top of my head called episode story, and I say story because it's actually in 4 parts. One called Robots of Death, where they're on a ship and these robots are killing off people and they don't know who it is, and it actually there is a human that's the person that's making it all happen. So there are occasions like that, and it's considered one of the best stories of all time. And so you do get some, but I don't, and maybe folks out there like Chuck and Brad, maybe you can think of other examples, but I don't really think there's a ton that are like that. I think they don't play quite like murder mysteries.
Okay. One final question for me, and then I think I'm out of questions.
More water over here for me.
Yeah. Did any of the Doctor Who's go back to the time of Revolutionary War, the founding, the creation of America, and all of that? Actually,
no,
that
not quite. And the reason why is because it's British, right? There's some like touchstones on Civil War on occasion, but not really on the American Revolution, to my knowledge. Like there's the Revolutionary War, French Revolution, excuse me, that they did a story on, but I've always wanted to see something on the American Revolution myself. I think that would have been really good. I'm trying to remember, unless someone's out there like, no, Greg, there's one out there that is exactly that, but I don't think they've ever done anything on the American Revolution.
Okay, because I think that one there really is one of the greatest stories, because it gave birth to, well, what's really considered to be the largest nation in the world.
Yeah.
But it also gave birth to a nation with some of the largest egos too.
The thing about when you get the Doctor into some of these situations that are like well-known historical moments.
That's the one.
Oh, she was. Oh, okay. I didn't realize. Okay, but
yeah,
you still had a Sherlock Holmes in it, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sherlock was in it, but Sherlock wasn't the main character.
And
that's what I'm thinking of.
And Johnny Lee Miller was in an episode of a story of Doctor Who called Kinda. Not, okay. I just as a kind of a side, more of a sub role. But the thing about having the Doctor in some of these historical moments is that stuff that happens, like the success of some of those moments, are kind of prodded by the Doctor, which is kind of fun, but at the same time, it's kind of like a bit like Ancient Aliens in a sense. If you watch Ancient Aliens, they pretty much anything that is.
I've got this season. I haven't watched it yet, but.
And anything of human advancement, they put down to aliens, including, like, they've pretty much said that, like, the reason why we won the American Revolution is because of aliens, stuff like that. It kind of takes away the real heroes of those moments, which is not the Doctor, it's not aliens, it's the General Washington, it's Benjamin Franklin, it's Thomas Jefferson, it's all these unsung heroes. And so to me, it kind of becomes a bit of, yes, it's all in fun, but at the same time, it does, you don't want to kind of gloss over who really made it happen, who really made these important moments of history happen.
Well, my thing, when it comes to time traveling, and I just mentioned this on the show recently, that if I had the ability to travel through time, is I would go back and just observed how things really happened, instead of how things are said, what we were taught in school. Like, I would go back to the time of Jesus to see what really happened during that time.
It's messed up, Jeremy, when you had the long hair. Maybe you were Jesus, I mean, if you went back in time and suddenly next thing you know, oh my God, I was Jesus the whole time. I mean, that's the thing about time travel, right? I mean, you don't know.
If that was the case, and I wouldn't be going through 8 surgeries putting my face back together.
Well, and not, I mean, obviously Jesus didn't look like the Anglo Jesus that we had, that it's,
Yeah.
you know,
So I would go back to see, what did he really do? What did he really look like? And plus, I would like to go back to see, okay, what really happened during the Revolutionary War? Because let's face it, when you look at everything in the history books, everything that's written down was written by the winners, technically.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
No, that's totally
So
what it is.
yeah. So what really happened during the Revolutionary War? What really happened during World War II or World War One or anything? I
Absolutely.
had to go back and just observe and see what happened.
And I just want to go back to the 60s and see if what I feel like the feel of the 60s was, if I could find anywhere on earth that matches that feel. I mean, and not like the flower power, free love, just like how Hollywood was in the 60s.
Yeah.
I'd love to go back there and just see what it was like. And being the Doctor Who fan I am, I'd love to go back and somehow record those missing episodes of Doctor Who so that
Um, I came across something when I was looking up the missing episodes. Oh, wrong page. Here we go. Okay, so they have a thing here about missing episodes, and then they have a section where it's called orphaned episodes.
Yep.
I haven't looked up to see what it is, but that that's an interesting term, orphaned episodes.
So back in the 63 to 89, one story would be shown anywhere between 2 episodes, and the longest had been like 12 episodes or 14 episodes, I guess. So you'd have these 25-minute episodes. So in the 60s, you might have one story that was made up of 4 episodes.
They're only half-hour shows?
Back then, now they're 50-minute shows.
Okay.
They're 50-minute shows. But back then, they're 25-minute episodes. And then they would have a cliffhanger at the end of every episode so that you could, get you go back to watch the next one. So in the 60s, some of these stories that had like maybe 4 episodes, only 2 episodes might exist. And so those are orphaned episodes because they don't have the full story to them.
Okay, I get it now. So it's like ripping out pages in a book.
Yeah. Totally.
Makes
Because
sense.
I mean, here's the funny thing about it is that that even though you have missing episodes, that there were a number of people in the 60s who audio recorded the series when it was being broadcast because they loved it so much. They audio recorded it. Every single episode of Doctor Who exists in some form. It may not be visually. Those 97 episodes may not visually exist, but they certainly exist in audio form. And then there was somebody in the that would sell, like they would take pictures off the screen and sell it back to the production because there was no VCRs or anything. They would put that in actors' portfolios, these pictures of them on screen doing the shows. They're called telesnaps, and a number of episodes exist, like just random pictures as telesnaps. I mean, as far as British television goes, as far as stuff that's missing, Doctor Who is very well represented. Even if it's missing 97 episodes, it's very well represented. Like there's a series called Dixon of Dock Green that had 435 episodes made. Only 35 episodes remain of that series, and there is nothing else. And so, when you think of that, Doctor Who is extraordinarily well represented in the archives.
Well, I'm seeing something here where it seemed like some of these episodes were recreated through animation.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. That's a relatively new thing, very popular, and it gives some kind of they gives a representation. And the new animations kind of go outside the lines of sticking strictly to the script, and I think that's a wise move because you're doing animation, have fun with it, but they're using the audio that I talked about existed. That's the base, and then they're putting the animation over it.
That's actually a really clever idea.
Oh yeah.
So visually it may not be the same, but it's still the exact same episode.
It is. It is. And I've had the honor to work on some of that stuff. And it's been, and not necessarily on the official level, but I've a number of private stuff that kind of prompted the BBC to do the official stuff. And then I was actually pitching it to the BBC with some other people for a story called Reign of Terror that we did some animation tests for, that we were in the running with other production companies to animate Doctor Who.
That's the one title that seems to pop up more than any other Reign of Terror.
It's the Prince Revolution episode. Yeah, it's really good.
Okay, that's season 1.
Season 1, the last story of season 1.
Okay. So, would it be fair to say that of the ones that are available, you have seen every episode of Doctor Who?
Jeremy, I have seen every episode of Doctor Who probably about 100 times, and I am not kidding. I own every episode in some form at least 5 to 7 times in different formats. I am a bit of a fan. I have the novelization of every story. I have the scripts to every episode. I have studio footage that hasn't been released of these stories. I have, I have interviews. I have, oh my God, I have laser discs from Hong Kong of Doctor Who. I mean,
That's something I haven't heard in a while. Laserdisc.
Yes.
Those didn't last very long.
Well, long enough for me to collect a bunch of them. So I have 16 millimeter film prints of episodes. So
you basically have a Doctor Who museum.
I do. I have the pinball game, the Doctor Who pinball game. I have helmets of Cybermen. I have miniature TARDIS consoles. I have tons of the toys. I have someone staying here right now, and I'm sure she's just like, what the hell is this place? I mean, it's yeah. I have long scarves. I have
imagine what your setup would look like if you were set up at a Doctor Who convention.
I mean, this house is a Doctor Who convention. When it's not haunted and doesn't have like aliens here, it's a Doctor Who convention. It's also a British television archive. It's also a library. This place has so much stuff in it. It's unbelievable.
Okay, so let me flip a switch on this one real quick. I wasn't going to do this, but now I have to. Have you ever tried, not that I've seen so far, but have you tried to use one of your shows to contact an actor from the Doctor Who series?
Not yet, but I've had a lot of people ask me. I've had a lot of people, like, I'll say, who should I try to reach out to? And I get William Hartnell, Patrick Troughton. Those are 2 of the doctors that have passed. And I should do that. I don't do it only because I try to do stuff that people know who these people are. But maybe at some point I need to do Hartnell, Troughton, Pertwee, and just kind of see if we can get anyone. It's like John Pertwee, who played the 3rd Doctor. He was all about himself. I think if anyone's going to come through, it's going to be John Pertwee. And I should do that. I really should. And just I haven't, because I want people to watch my show, and I don't know if they would. But and I don't want people. It's a fine line, Jeremy, as you know. We know a certain somebody in, I think, what is he, in Arizona or something. As soon as a celebrity dies, he tries to reach out to them through Spirit Box.
I know a number of them.
Huff in particular. I just don't want the fans of Doctor Who that I work with look at me suddenly and be like, that's too far. That's what I worry about, honestly.
Well, I'm looking at a picture of John Pertwee, and he looks familiar. He's one of those guys that looks familiar, so I'm sure I've seen him in some of the other roles. Because I'm looking up some of these guys now. William Hartnell.
Mm-hmm.
He was 67, but he died a long time ago.
Yeah, he ended up getting basically multiple sclerosis. Excuse me, tongue doesn't always work. And so, in his last appearance, where he appeared with 2 other doctors, it was for the 10th anniversary. he couldn't even remember the lines because his mind was so far gone, and they had to have big boards up for him to say his lines. And it's just it was great that he's on there, but it was also a sad way to watch someone so good. And he created the role, he created this series in a sense, and it was not the greatest exit for him. And then he passed away 2 years later, and it just wasn't a good life for him at the end.
I would say if there's anybody to contact, he would be the one because he was the first.
He was the first. Yep. Yep. And you know, I mean, he's always going to be the original Doctor to me. And you know, a lot of people who are more in the modern viewers of the series think, you know, kind of like what we're talking about, things moving slowly and stuff. Yeah, it does move slowly, but it's good. And they're not all meant to be watched, you know, as I know we all like to binge, but those early ones in particular, they're not meant to watch 6 episodes at a time. Take your time, do a couple a day where you have those cliffhangers, so you have a little bit time away going like, wonder how they're going to get out of it, and then go back and watch it. I think that's part of the viewing fun of Doctor Who. When I would watch it, because I used to watch on a regular basis, 1 half-hour, 125-minute episode a day, even though I knew what was going to happen, I loved. I was like, I can't wait to see the resolution of the cliffhanger. It was so much fun.
What about some of the companions? I'm sure a lot of the companions are probably gone because
More and
they
more.
used a good number of them.
They did. One of the most beautiful parts of the final Jodie Whittaker story, the story was to celebrate back in 2022 was the 100th anniversary of the BBC, not BBC television, but of the BBC. And the BBC said, Doctor Who is so important, we want a centenary episode of Doctor Who celebrating, meaning it's part of the 100-year celebration. And it was Jodie's last story. And in it, there were so many elements of that classic series in it. And one of the best parts was one of the original companions at the very end. He just had one line, but he was in it. And the character's name was Ian Chesterton, played by William Russell. And you know, it was like he actually is going to be in the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest gap between playing the same character and being on that show. So he was last on the show in 1965, and he didn't show up again until 2022, excuse me. It's
Wow.
incredible. It's incredible. And he just had one line. He's 98 years old. He has dementia, and so he had to be helped through that one line. But for all of us who watched and who've been fans for 40, 50 years, most of us started to cry when we saw him in there just for that one brief moment. It's just a beautiful moment.
So for that, um, was there enough of his mind left for him to actually enjoy doing this?
It was muffled, and Sophie Aldred, who was in the episode that I alluded to, that I interviewed earlier, we talked about it, and she just said that everyone was just very gentle. He was confused, but he understood where he was. And but it was, you know, it was a little bit tough. And the thing is obviously when he was on the show, there was only ever been one doctor, and it was always a male. And there was, at the end of the episode, it was like a little support group for past companions who couldn't talk about the doctor but have all experienced it, and they're talking about the doctor, and someone said she was a beautiful woman, and the Ian character says she, that's all he said, she, because he never knew. And it was just that really fun kind of moment that no, he wouldn't have known that the doctor could change genders or anything. And it was a poignant moment, and it was just, for us Doctor Who fans, beautiful that him and others were able to take part in that celebration.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah.
So that, something like that, even under those, that's history in the making, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because here's the thing, Jeremy, back in 1989 when the show was canceled, it was a show that was canceled. If the show got canceled tomorrow, which it won't, Doctor Who is now the same as Sherlock Holmes, as Dracula, as any story out there. It will never end. It will never completely go away. It will always come back in some form. You will never see the end of Doctor Who in some way. It will always be around.
I have no doubt of that. Especially, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of fan films being put out for Doctor Who, and fan literary fiction.
Absolutely.
Because I know that exists for Star Wars.
Yep.
That's out for Star Trek. Even Halloween, people are writing up their own stories and putting them out there.
Well, and you may or may not know the Japanese paranormal the paranormal series of like the why can't I think, you just kind of lose your mind after a while. The one that's all shot in night vision. You know what I'm talking about, paranormal the films. Jeremy, help me out here.
I'm drawing a blank too.
You're a horrible host. Let's see here. Let's see. Paranormal, not state. Give me a second here. Paranormal.
No, it can't be Ringu. That's a movie.
Give me 1 second here. Wait.
Are you talking about Paranormal Activity?
Jesus, yes, I am. The thing is, have you ever heard between the first and second films, there was a Japanese film that's not official?
That I do know.
And have you ever seen it?
I have not.
Because it's actually, I think, the best in the whole series.
No kidding.
It is phenomenal. It's so good. It's all in Japanese. So you have to listen to subtitles. But
I do have to say, when it comes to scary movies, the Japanese, they come up with some of the most original stuff I've ever seen. The Ring, Grudge, something like that. They had never really done here in America. But over there, they come up with some really, really cool stuff. Even some cool kills.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorites that I've seen, I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen the scene where there's a school bus with a bunch of high school kids, and they come across this. It's invisible, but it's like a fishing line, and it cuts off the top half of the bus and the kids and the driver, except for one kid who just happened to be leaning down. And after all was said and done, I forget if it was a boy or a girl, but this person stood up and saw the damage, and that's all I remember seeing.
Wow.
Yeah. You talk about one hell of a scene.
Yeah, that sounds incredible.
Yeah. So, is there anybody out in the audience that have any questions for Greg?
Yeah. Are there?
Yeah, because I don't really have any more questions right now. I could go digging around on this thing, but
we covered a lot, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, and we jumped all over. My favorite sonic screwdriver.
Is that a Doctor Who joke?
So, okay. So let me grab. So the Doctor has a device that it doesn't look like a flashlight, but it's this long cylinder thing, and he calls it a sonic screwdriver. And so, originally it was meant to kind of just help open up doors and stuff. And in the new series, one of the things I'm not too happy about, for a while, it kind of became a kind of a get out of jail free card. It kind of helped move the plot along.
Okay.
A lot of different designs over the years. But I am still pretty partial to either the look of it in the classic series or the Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant sonic screwdriver. And ever since then, it's been overly designed. And the one that Jodie had, no offense, looked a bit like a dildo, to be honest. And that was really not a good thing for a female doctor. It was really a misstep, I think.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was just you. Okay, you take a look at it, Jeremy. I'll send you a picture, and you tell me what you think about that. And yeah, Brad, that was a running joke when it was released. Yeah, absolutely. And Chuck asks if sorry, I don't mean to take over your show, Jeremy. But if Doctor Who is in a place to continue for X many years with Russell T Davies and beyond. And the thing is, so Jeremy, Russell's production company, Bad Wolf Productions, is running Doctor Who now, and they're working with Disney Plus. And the thing is that I don't think Bad Wolf will ever give up Doctor Who, because it's going to be lucrative for them, because they're going to make all these spin-offs. And I am fairly certain that the spin-offs that they're going to make is not going to be BBC property. They might have BBC characters in it, but it's not going to be BBC property. What people in the UK don't realize, because I've already seen it, they're like, well, how are they going to show all these spin-offs on the BBC? They're not. They were not going to be on the BBC. They're going to be streaming. And that's where people are going to have to get used to kind of a new way of watching all things Doctor Who. The purpose of Disney Plus having the series is to make it and grow it and not allow anyone else to see it unless you become a Disney Plus subscriber. That's just basic, economics in a sense. Doctor Who is always going to be BBC, but any spin-offs is not. They're going to want to grow it. Russell may not be there forever, but he's going to be the George Lucas of Doctor Who, that he's always going to keep his eye on it. It's never going to leave that realm again. I guarantee that.
Yeah, that actually kind of pisses me off, because I'm kind of running across that same thing with some of the Stephen King shows.
Sure.
I am not a subscriber to Netflix, and there are several brand new movies that I really want to see that are only on Netflix, and they're not going to put them out on DVD, and I am not happy about that.
Well, and for example, ABC Australia has been running Doctor Who since 1964. And now it's going over to Disney Plus, and they are, Australian fans are like, now we have to pay to watch it. And you just left this broadcaster that's been so committed to Doctor Who for 60 years, and now you just are leaving behind. But the problem is, this is all business. This is all what it comes down to. It's business, and
yeah.
It's
really like, well, if they want it, they're going to have to pay for it.
They're going to have to pay for it, and that's a new concept. And I don't blame people for not wanting to do it, but at the same time, if you want Doctor Who, you're going to have to show it too. You have to belly up a little bit.
Yeah, and unfortunately, today's economy is not exactly the greatest.
No.
Yeah. So does anybody else out there have any questions? Did I skip? Oh, have you been to any Doctor Who conventions in the U.S.? I'm sure you have.
I've been going to, I've been running, I've been working at Doctor Who conventions since 1988. So, and I was just at one 2 weeks ago, Council Room in the Twin Cities, and I was an interviewer there. I interviewed a number of people, and I did panels. I've been in the UK and done conventions. I've been in Canada. I've done conventions. I've talked in front of 600 people at the biggest convention, Gallifrey, in Los Angeles, interviewing people like Colin Baker, who was the Doctor. So, I mean, yeah, I've been all over. I've certainly been over. I've written for the BBC about Doctor Who. I've written for BBC America about Doctor Who. I mean, and my story is not even a successful one compared to other people, but I've certainly been able to have quite the fun. And as I was saying to Jeremy before the show started, I've just been invited out to the UK to MC for Kaleidoscope and the BFI Doctor Who event. And I don't know if there's two events, one in Birmingham, one in London for the BFI. I don't think I'm doing the BFI one, but I'll be there. And they're bringing me out in some capacity to have a day of showing Doctor Who rarities, which I've already given them a list of stuff that I can provide that they can show or find or track down. So, it's my career in Doctor Who has been really cool. I've been a character in one of the new adventure books that was killed off in the first couple pages. I mean, it's been really fun to be able to my life had been Doctor Who for quite a bit, and it's been a lot of fun doing it.
And how many of the different doctors have you met?
I've met the third Doctor, the fourth Doctor, the fifth Doctor, the sixth Doctor, the seventh Doctor, the eighth Doctor. I've not met the ninth Doctor. I have seen the 10th Doctor. I have had drinks with the 11th Doctor. I've met the 12th Doctor has sat in front of me during a premiere in New York for his first story. Jodie Whittaker is going to be in LA, which I won't be going to that convention. And then Shooty I haven't met.
Yeah. So a majority of them.
A good amount of them, and I've met so many of the companions. I've interviewed so many of the companions that, and it's been, and most are very approachable. There might be one or two that are a little prickly, but no one's rude. No one's horrible. They're all really nice people, and they love fans.
Billie Piper, have you met her?
I'll tell you, and I shouldn't say this. I was at one of the conventions, and a friend of mine was her handler, and people give guests a lot of stuff. Like they just give gifts, like they give them gifts and they can't take them with. So at the end, my friend got the gift bag, and at the end of the convention, 6 of us sat around and we all did this game where we ended up getting parts of what they gave to Billie Piper. I got a picture, and this is why fandom is weird. I got a picture of Linda Blair in The Exorcist, and this is a still projectile vomiting. And it's like, why did you give this to Billie Piper? What on earth could you possibly have given this to her for? And so I got this picture, and about 2 years later, there was a Paracon in Mahnomen, Minnesota, where Linda Blair was appearing. And I so badly wanted to bring that picture, then I couldn't find it. It's somewhere in this house. But I really wanted to bring it to her, have a picture of her and I with it, and maybe have her sign it. But yeah, so
maybe Linus stole that picture so that he can use that as inspiration for his next hairball.
Well, and I mean, he does projectile vomit on occasion, so anything is possible. So yeah, I don't know, but it's around here somewhere. I mean, everything. Someone asked me the other day, do you happen to have this in your house, like some kind of hole puncher? I'm like, probably. I think I have everything in here somewhere. My ex-wife left a lot of stuff behind, and we had a lot of junk here. You might be able to say, well, that you mean the Doctor Who stuff. No, I don't. I mean, just a lot of junk. So
no, we talked about this stuff that she had left behind, and then just recently, I think you finally got rid of it all.
Not all, not even close to all, but she filled up a semi, and I'm not kidding. She filled up a semi, 23,000 pounds that she filled up from this house into a semi. There's still stuff left. There's still stuff in the garage that she's coming back for this spring.
How big of a house do you have?
It's a big house. We were going to have a family, and then we decided that we don't like each other. So that's kind of how that worked. And I love it here. I love it here. And anyone who watches my different lives, I do them in different parts of the house, and it's like a big studio sometimes. And
yeah.
I just love it here.
Well, I've only ever seen you in front of those vertical blinds.
Yeah, because that's if they start moving, then we should all be scared, because that means spirit interaction or Linus, one of the two. So,
okay, because I remember a lot of places in my house. I have the vent right underneath the window, so those blinds are moved.
Right. And they are, and that's why we always have to check. But they've not moved since I've done any spirit box stuff here. So that's a good thing. I have a room upstairs that has my entirety of the British PAL VHS collection of Doctor Who, like all the stories on VHS from the UK. And I was going to do it from up there tonight, but I put all of the stuff over there, and I do a series on YouTube called Doctor Who on BBC Video that I do the video up there, but it's all filled up with stuff because when Jolene came here in August, I put all that stuff to the side, kind of like You don't need to go over here at all. I guarantee nothing of yours is over there. Stay away. Just because it's just like, let's just keep it clean. So I still have all that stuff over there.
So this may be a really weird question. So VHS,
Yes.
there's a lot of things between the UK and the United States. When they make them differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some of the DVDs are that way too, because I actually bought a DVD that I didn't realize was made in the UK that I cannot play on any of my systems here.
Right.
So did V8 was cassette tapes the same way?
No. So in the US, when we're talking analog television, our system in the US, which is 525 line, HD is 1920 by 1080. NTSC is 525, and UK is PAL, which is
I
625.
never thought of that, Chuck. I'll have to do that.
Oh yeah, you could definitely do it on that. And so you needed special equipment to either convert or special equipment to play it on a PAL TV, and I have all that. I mean, I decided I wanted to go that route. So every television in my house, every VCR in my house is multi-system. I could play NTSC and PAL. And so I just wanted to get all of the VHSs from the UK, which was super costly, but it was, and they look amazing. I love them. And then DVD, once you get to DVD, they go into regions. So in the US, we're region 1. And it also has, it's still 525 versus 625 line. When you go into Blu-ray, that's different type of regions, because it's region 1 in the US for DVD, but it'd be region A for Blu-ray. And you're not necessarily PAL and NTSC, but you're more of like 50i versus 60i. So it's becoming more and more like that gap is starting to close, where like in the UK, the Doctor Who Blu-ray sets that they're releasing, they're region free. You can play them anywhere basically now. They're kind of doing away with that because it's just kind of silly. It's not necessary anymore.
It is because I was really upset because I was ready to watch this thing because it was actually a part of a TV series, and season 3 happened to be in that region too.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, I can't watch now. I got to skip all the way to season 4.
Yeah.
And I'm going to miss out a big part of the story arc.
Yeah. Nope. And Chuck is right. Try playing on your computer. Your computer should be able to play it. And even now,
I actually never thought about doing that on my computer. Never thought about that. So I will.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, back then it was so hard. Now it's so easy, and that's just kind of how it works now. And I mean, but that was part of the fun for me, to be able to collect them and PAL. And I had friends in the UK that would send me rarities and PAL, and it's all part of to me, it's all part of the thing. And that was also something I was really into, was tape trading. Before they were coming out in VHS, before they were all around here, we would trade with people around the country and around the world, different episodes, because we didn't have access to them. I have stuff from New Zealand, from Australia, recordings, and that they're just, it's like what we did as fans to be able to see the series before they were all available to all of us.
Wow. We kind of did the same thing with wrestling. Oh,
I'm sure.
Yeah, especially with wrestling cards.
Oh, yeah. It's all about trading, isn't it? For what you don't have, what you can offer, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's why it's nice. That's why in some cases it's nice to be able to have multiples of the same thing. Okay, I got this. I don't need it. I got 20 others.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I do. There's a story called The Five Doctors for Doctor Who. I probably have bought it probably about 12 to 15 times in different formats, easily.
Wow. Well, I would probably keep one of each format and then trade away all the rest of them.
I have a friend who handles all of the he used to handle all the distribution of Doctor Who in the US, and I have copies of all those master tapes, and they're versions that don't technically really exist anymore because they're not what's available, but I have them because I'm an archivist. That's what I do. I archive and collect and make sure that they're around. So I have so many recordings of so many different Doctor Who stories just because they're that is part of our fabric of fans, because it's not just the Doctor Who stories, but it's the stuff before and after the episodes that are super important, that are part of the heritage of that time.
Okay, now this leads to an interesting situation because I know that with certain shows that they had this whole deal about copyrights and distributions, and
Yes.
that it not illegal to have a copy of this, but they don't want anybody to have a copy of this. So how does that work out?
Can I answer you in 2 minutes? Because I need to run real fast. Can I do that real fast?
Sure.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
All right, give me 2 minutes.
All that big wine thing that he had there. Of course, we have been running for 2.5 hours, which which is amazing because the thing about Doctor Who is just so vast. And for those of you like Josh, for those of you that are just joining us, I have never seen a single episode of Doctor Who of any particular series or season. Or yeah, so that's the whole point of this show, is have him educate me, not necessarily to spoil the series for me, because I don't give a damn about spoilers. Tell me what happened. I don't care. Um, so I'm using this show as a way to learn about Doctor Who in several different things. Yeah, and I'm definitely very interested in getting into Doctor Who. Want to see it, and I want to see all 40 seasons of it. Not necessarily just start at 2005 and go from there. I want to see them all. Um, and that actually leads to another question that I'm going to ask Greg. Thank you, Linda. Um, is that with the way that it works, with the different doctors and the way that they go back and forth on the timeline, is that does it really matter if you watch it in a specific order? Like a lot of shows, they say watch it from season one, episode one, all the way through because of the story arc. But and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that it sounds like with the Doctor, with him bouncing back and forth through time, you could probably go, well, I'm going to watch the fifth Doctor first, and then I'll jump over to 10th Doctor and go back and forth. The only thing that would have some sort of a continuity would probably be the very last show of a series and the very first show of a series.
This is an interesting question because I think anybody who's getting into Doctor Who, whether it is me or anybody else, I mean, I got into it when it was the fifth Doctor. So obviously there's 4 Doctors previous that I had never seen, and actually never thought I would because they were so old. Those 20 years old at that point, which now I've been watching the series for about 40 years, which is bizarre. But I think the earlier ones, the classic series, you can dip in and out. And I think it's about the same for all the series. But I'll tell you, with hindsight, that there is a payoff when you watch it. And this is just an example. When you watch it from a story called Rose, which is the first 2005 reboot episode, to a point called The Day of the Doctor. And there's a payoff for watching it in order, knowing what the Doctor has gone through and how something that we thought was established history was not. And I think there's a great payoff. And so anyone who is wanting to get into it, I always would urge, try to watch some of that in order, because I think that's a great payoff and it goes through three, actually four doctors, really, that pays that there's something really cool about the storytelling during that period of time. But I think that the earlier ones that you can dip in and out, I think you can actually for the whole series, but there's more continuity in the new series that is worth watching in my mind in broadcast order.
Okay, because I know back in the older days, um, they didn't worry too much about continuity on a lot of the TV series.
Mm-mm. I mean, sometimes for Doctor Who, sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't, and there's, there's a lot of like explanations why Earth blew up and why it stopped, populating the Earth and all that stuff, and that's just because they have a story to tell and they don't want to be bogged down by a story in 1966 talking about the Earth blowing up. They want to tell their own story. And the thing is, too, that's really important to remember. When Doctor Who was on between 1963 and say 1981, for a great example, no one had VCRs and they didn't repeat the stories that often. So if you watched it in 1963 with William Hartnell as the Doctor, the very first time in the UK that they reshowed a William Hartnell Doctor story was in 1981 during a repeat series called Five Faces of Doctor Who. So they weren't repeating this stuff on a regular basis on the BBC.
Wow.
And
So
over
you,
here in the US, we got it all the time. That's the funny thing about it.
wow. UK Gold, yeah, yeah.
UK Gold it was a cable channel that didn't start till the late
Oh,
80s. So that was, yes, they started showing the old episodes then, but really before that though, their repeats weren't that common. Where even like if they showed a whole season of Doctor Who, they would show a couple examples from that season, but they wouldn't rerun the whole season. And out of season repeats were virtually unknown.
all right. Josh, the newest Doctor Who is a person of color, but it's a man,
Yes.
not a woman.
Yep. Yep. Shuti Gatwa is the it's funny because he is technically not the current Doctor because we still haven't seen the return of David Tennant. That's this is its own version of wibbly wobbly timey wimey sort of BS that Doctor Who gives. And I haven't been this excited for the future of Doctor Who for years, literally for years. I mean, this is really the previous showrunner, Chris Chibnall. He wouldn't let anything out. He wouldn't give any hints of what's coming up. No tidbits of any information, which we all know we need to be excited about stuff. Anything, any franchise needs something.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing it for Doctor Who. Now that Russell is back, Russell is having a field day, giving us little hints and little just fun pieces. And it's so exciting to see. And the new TARDIS console room is going to be phenomenal. If anyone's seen pictures of that, absolutely. I mean, I think it's going to become a favorite for me. I mean, there's so much fun stuff coming. I can't wait.
So knowing that, even though the new shows with David Tennant are coming out, knowing that there's going to be another Doctor behind him
Yep.
and already set, have they said how long David's tenure is going to be?
Yep. He's only in for 3 episodes in November of this year, 3 specials. And it literally is, it's going to be in November. November is actually the anniversary month for Doctor Who, and that's the 60th. So he's just in there, and who knows what other surprises we're going to have. We have a previous companions returning from his period of time as well, Donna Noble. And it's just going to be it's just going to be celebratory. It's going to be wonderful. And then after those 3 episodes, for whatever reason, and we don't know what that reason is yet, that the Doctor regenerates into Ncuti, and that's going to air in around Christmas of this year. I mean, and here's the thing: you could already see massive difference. If anyone notices production style, they released a teaser for the new episodes back in October, or no, December, excuse me. And you could already see the quality of the shots, the quality of the production is just a little bit more refined and a little bit more cinematic. And it's a really exciting time to be a fan of the series.
So what's interesting with having Shooty come in is that this is the first time, if I'm not wrong on this is the first time that somebody from the UK is not Doctor Who, right?
From the UK is not Doctor Who. Well, he's from. Well, I mean, he lives in the UK.
He does.
Yeah, he lives in the UK. He's and
he was born in Wanda.
Yeah, but I mean, he was over. But yeah, I'm trying to think. If there was anyone else that was born outside the UK, I mean, technically, I mean, like Tennant was born in Scotland. I mean, that's part of the UK, but that's always its own battle.
But it'd be somebody, because what I'm leading with this is that going towards somebody who has a different accent.
Yeah, and I haven't seen enough of Shooty's work, but I mean, I do think that there is something to be said about that. This is a very different casting, for sure, for a lot of different reasons, and not just the color part of it. And I mean, this guy's life is going to change. I mean, it already is changing. And yeah, Josh was right. He grew up in the UK.
Okay.
But I mean, still, you're right. I mean, he wasn't born in the UK. I think I'm trying to remember if John Pertwee was born outside the UK. I don't think he was. But yeah, I get your point.
Yeah,
Chuck.
I know that Doctor Who started out as a British production.
Yep.
And all of the Doctor Who's that they have had were, British or Scottish.
Part of the Commonwealth, of the UK. Yep.
So what would really be groundbreaking if they went with somebody that is so far out of the UK, like let's say they get somebody like let's say Daniel Kim. I think that's his name. He was in Lost and one of the new reboots, like Hawaii 5-0 or something like that.
Yeah, no, yeah, right. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Well,
so if we went with somebody like that with not just a different look, but a completely different voice.
Here's the funny thing about that is that I think we've been kind of conditioned in a sense, like to kind of get us ready for these type of changes, which is unfortunate. We have to get ourselves ready for it, but they're doing that. And what I mean by that was, for example, we talked about the Master, and that was one of the first Time Lords that we really watched have a kind of a gender change. That was a regular character. He became a character named Missy, who was a woman, and that kind of got us ready for the fact that the Doctor would eventually be a woman. And we've also seen some Time Lords regenerate from being Caucasian to being black, and that now where we're at with Shooty, and it's like why can't we have different accents, different nationalities? I mean, this is how it should be. And I know that British fans will be like, well, we want our doctors to be British, just like we want our James Bonds to be British. But at the same time, that's not feasible if we're going to have a larger consciousness of not only globally, but the universe, so to speak, because that's what Doctor Who's about.
Yeah, and I understand wanting to keep it, all British. I get that. But at the same time, and I am in no way endorsing this whole woke bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I am looking at it to a logical standpoint, because if a Time Lord can jump or go from body to body to body, to me it makes perfect sense that the next body may not necessarily be a British person. It might be a Japanese person. It might be somebody in South America, or it might be somebody from another planet.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of a sad take on the world when if there's somebody like, well, it'd be interesting if the doctor was like they made like some guy up to be kind of look more alien to be the doctor after regeneration, and they prefer that over a woman or a person of color. That's not right. I mean, and as kind of what we've been talking about earlier, the idea that what who our heroes are is what makes us, right? I mean, the doctor has an influence on me as a person that I am, but it may not for a young lady or a person of color because they can't relate. Why can't they have that opportunity the way that I did? And that's what I really would like to see, because Doctor Who isn't for me, it's for everybody. And I really want to I think that there is so much power in who they cast, and that people who don't like it because there's a woman or that there is a person of color, then don't watch. We don't need you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I know enough to know that Doctor Who has been very influential on many people.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't, the show wouldn't still be going on, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is too is like for so many, I mean, so many of my friends associated with Doctor Who are gay. I mean, that's just there's a very strong gay culture to fandom in Doctor Who, and a lot of the writers are gay, and a lot of the people behind the scenes are gay, and there's a lot of iconism with Doctor Who for gay iconism, and that was for me my first experience with anyone who was gay was to be able to meet people who loved, excuse me, Doctor Who, and it just being around these people broadens your mind, broadens your world, and that's kind of what Doctor Who does.
And I have actually, up until just now, I have never heard anything about gayism and Doctor Who.
Oh
I
gosh.
have never heard of any correlation between the two.
Well, but it is, and there's a lot of empowerment with it, and a lot of acceptive, being accepted, and that's, I mean, that's the funny thing about like a Doctor Who convention or fandom in general. It's always about feeling accepted, and so it's being accepted because what's on the show makes you feel accepted, but also your peers when you're in fandom and feeling you're in a safe place. And not it, I see people writing, I don't care about race, color, life is life, all that stuff. Yes, you are absolutely right. But for those people who do not feel accepted, Doctor Who fandom can be a place that allows people to feel accepted when they're not accepted by outside. That the people look at them because they're a little bit different. And Doctor Who fandom, and I think a lot of different fandoms, gives people that uh, that ability to feel accepted, because we're all outsiders, and especially in the 80s when we're Doctor Who fans, we were really outsiders, and we felt like, wow, we found our own. And that happens with all sorts of different type of people.
Huh? As long as the stories are good, yeah, absolutely. Um, and I like that Doctor Who can touch on so many people in different areas.
Hmm. Can
So,
I
so it's going to be interesting to see what Judy, is that his
Shooty? Yep. It's spelled NCUTI, but it's an African name, and it's pronounced as Shooty. When it's the NC, it's a sh sound. Shooty Gatwa.
So has there been, since the announcement of him becoming Doctor Who, has there been any kind of a backlash on him like there was for Jodie?
I haven't seen it, and I think that people who don't like it, and maybe there isn't anyone who doesn't like it, but I think people have been very, very wise to keep their mouth shut, because that's an area you do not want to mess in when as soon as you start talking about, oh my gosh, the new Doctor is black, forget that. good riddance. You're done. You are done at that point. There's a lot of forums and stuff. You are going to be done.
I I actually remember on a low scale when they were making the Dark Tower movie,
Yeah.
and when they I can't even, Idris
Yeah.
when Idris was cast as Roland, and there were a few people saying, "Well, why is he? Roland wasn't black."
Mhm.
Well, okay, think about it. Does it really truly matter, or maybe he was the best person for the job out of all of those that went out for it? Because in my opinion, a young Clint Eastwood would be best as Roland. But we don't have young Clint Eastwood. We don't have anybody even near how Clint Eastwood was.
Well, and like for example, there's some Disney reimaginations that have like some of the Disney princesses as women of color, and there's been backlash about that, and you're like, really, you're going to rob somebody of a chance to be a
Ariel,
princess, trying to be, why can't everyone have that moment to be like what they really want to be? And that's just disgusting to me that people don't that like, oh well, she can't be Cinderella because she's not white. That's disgusting.
yeah, we just went through that literally with Ariel from the Little Mermaid
And
last
probably
year.
what I'm thinking of, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, because somebody put out a picture where it was either they changed the skin color or they changed her hair color,
Yeah.
and there was a big backlash on that one.
Yeah. And it's like, wow. I mean, all people are beautiful, and to confine that only you're just saying only princesses should be white, and it's like, what sort of backwater world are we living in that's okay?
Right.
And that just is so sad, because they bring so much, and everyone deserves to have their moment.
Brad was asking earlier, I don't know if you ever touched on this, but Brad was asking earlier if you think at some point they will have a redheaded
The
doctor.
ginger. So
Yeah.
so that is an ongoing joke, that the doctor, every time he regenerates, he's just like, he's waiting to become ginger. He's waiting for a ginger version of himself, and every single time, because he hasn't been ginger, it's literally like, and this is really for the new series. He's just
Oh,
like, oh, I'm not ginger yet, and so that's an ongoing joke, and um, then not necessarily with the new David Tennant, but yet at least. But so, and it'd be really interesting if Shooty touches on that, like, not ginger yet. So, and Shooty, the way that we see it so far, he's going to be the first Doctor to have some facial hair too, which is, he looks. I mean, I hope he keeps the facial hair because he looks great in it.
okay. So, do you have a favorite doctor?
I really, I mean, the stock answer is I love them all, but I think for me, Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor, and this is based on one of my rewatches from the very beginning of the series, and at that point, Matt Smith first series was out, so it spanned a lot of years. I watched an episode a day, and I like, Patrick Troughton really embodied the role of the Doctor. He was mysterious. He would mislead people. He was very mischievous. He was fun. He had, as people who worked with him would always say, he had a twinkle in his eye. He was just, there was something about him that really, when you look at it, literally every actor who played the role since had something from that version of the Doctor in them. And one of the problems was, as you got later on in the classic series, the actors who played them would be like, well, you're just really playing yourself, as the role of the Doctor. Peter Davison said that, Colin Baker said that, and I don't agree with that. And Hartnell and Troughton in particular, they played characters. They didn't play themselves. Pertwee kind of played himself a little bit, but Troughton in particular and Hartnell, they played a character, a distinct character. They knew what this doctor, their doctor would do, what they wouldn't do. Hell, Hartnell on the TARDIS console, he mapped out in his mind what each button meant. You know, they really put a lot of their own effort into it without playing it themselves. They played it a certain way, and Troughton to me always wins out. I adore him. He is so good in the role. He is so good. There's a story called Tomb of the Cybermen where you really get to see how good of an actor he is in the role of the Doctor. And can I
go ahead?
I was just going to say, can I touch on something before I use the restroom? You asked about copyright.
Yes. Yes.
And you know, as far as the VHS, like the recording off the air, you know, you were allowed to have a copy. You're allowed to record something as long as you didn't share it like we all did, or, you know, sell it. But
that was something that was already broadcast on TV.
Yes, it was. It was, but you could record it for yourself, but it wasn't meant for distribution. You know, it was, and if you traded it to someone else, that's distribution. But what's really interesting here, and I'm going to move away from VHS, I'm going to move to film prints. Collectors got a hold of a lot of stuff, films, missing British television, missing Doctor Who, and they were afraid of letting anyone know that they had this stuff because they were going to be prosecuted. And there was a famous case in the mid-70s by a very well-known comedian in UK named Bob Monkhouse, who was also a very avid recorder of television in the 60s and 70s and 80s, as well as a film collector. And they took him to court because they knew he had a lot of films that, like, you don't have copyright for these films. And what ended up being was that he won the case because he's like, yes, I own these films, but I'm not the copyright holder, and I'm not showing these, and I'm not sharing these. And so it kind of gave film collectors kind of a little bit of a pause that you could own the film, you could own the physical film. It just meant that you didn't own the copyright. And that's obvious to us now, but back in the 70s, it wasn't obvious. And when that happened, a lot of stuff started to get returned, even though there is still a lot of stuff out there because film collectors are still afraid to return something because they don't want to be prosecuted.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
And this was long before VHS is the earliest form of distribution that I know of, where people could go to stores and buy this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, so, like, for example, in the 1960s, there was a videotape format called Shabadan, which was an open reel, like kind of like the audio reel-to-reel tapes, like, you know, the reels, but it was for video. And so that was in the 60s. There was some trading of that during the 70s in the UK.
It's very similar to the reels that they would do at the movie theaters.
Totally, except one was film, one was video. Absolutely. And we have a lot of stuff recovered for British television, not Doctor Who, but for British television that would not exist if someone didn't record something on Shabadan. In fact, there was a point that Monty Python's Flying Circus almost was destroyed. Like, the first two series were almost completely wiped. And it was Terry Jones who got like a early Shabadan video machine to the BBC, and they recorded off all those episodes onto these tapes because they were afraid that their episodes were going to be destroyed. Could you imagine Monty Python's Flying Circus not existing? But if they did wipe them, Terry Jones was going to have a very poor quality copy, at least, and better than nothing.
I know that Monty Python is like one of the top tiers for a lot of video watchers.
Oh yeah. No, it's I mean, it still stands up. I mean, I think the films are a lot more popular. Like the Holy Grail is much more popular than the series. But for people like me, you know, the series,
I actually did not know anything about a TV series, but I knew that they had movies.
Yeah, it ran on the BBC from 69 to 74. 4 series, and there's some great stuff in there, but and there's a lot of stuff that gets reincorporated into the films, but a lot of that was almost lost, almost destroyed. Yeah.
Just think of the stuff that has been destroyed, because I'm sure there's a lot that has been destroyed, and things throughout history that's been destroyed
Yep.
that
Yep.
will never have it ever again.
I have returned myself about 5 different things to the BBC that I've returned lost material, not Doctor Who yet. But I've recovered, and one of them was from UCLA, and I acted on behalf of the BBC as the official BBC spokesperson to deal with UCLA to return a missing episode of a show called Hugh and I, which was culturally significant. So I was really happy to have been able to be a part of that.
Something like that's something to be extremely proud of.
I've been so blessed with so many things that I was able to, and there's an episode of Zed Cars that's going to be returned that I had a hand in that as well. And when I was younger, I always I want to return some missing Doctor Who. That I don't know how lucky I'll be with that. I've had about 3 very close encounters, but when it comes to the other stuff, I've had some luck returning it, and it's just I felt like I was doing my part from loving it for so long. And being a Yankee, it's really hard to get missing British television back, because a lot of it wasn't even shown here. How did that Hugh and I episode get to UCLA? We don't really know that, that sort of thing.
Sometimes the journeys themselves are as mysterious as the end result.
Totally. And it's does it really matter? It came back. That's the main thing at the end of the day.
Yeah. So, and this is something that I like about you, because not only, through your show and through some of the investigations and the events, are you helping people with reaching out to loved ones, but you are also making an impact on cinema history. Really?
Yeah.
Because you're recovering shows that were lost from long ago, and that is a very impactful thing in the cinema world, which is huge, if not the biggest thing in the world.
It's weird, because I think Doctor Who fans in general, and fans of British television, I'm sure other fans of different types too, we don't just sit there and we watch it. We feel like that we owe something because we had the privilege of watching, and that we want to be able to do something that makes an impact, like you said. And I've been put into that position a couple times to help in some way, and it's almost like it's my duty, which is such a weird way of putting it, and no one expects it, but it's an honor to be a part of it, I guess.
Well, I would be the same way, because I don't know how well you can see it, but I have a China hutch back where all my bowling. Inside those drawers are VHS tapes of wrestling shows that I taped off of TV back in the 90s.
Yeah. And
this is not just the WWF at the time, but this is also WCW. Some of it is AWF, ECW, a couple others. And if I knew that there was something that they were looking for in their archives and their video catalog that they don't have, that I might possibly have, you're damn right I'm going to go looking through that.
And it's not unheard of that is the case. And, through my work with Kaleidoscope, which is a British television preservation society, that's exactly what they do. They get domestic recordings like what you have, and they go through them, and they decide, they figure out what's missing that's on those recordings. And you're absolutely right that we all think that these especially these smaller wrestling markets, like in my area, AWA, you think, oh, they all exist. What makes you think that? There's no reason to think that. Storing videotapes that don't get used often costs money. So who's to say all the AWA tapes exist, but then you've taped a lot of them, and I wouldn't be surprised one bit if you have stuff that they don't. That would not surprise me one bit.
Yeah, because I was wrestling at the time for me was a religion.
Yeah.
And I taped it every Monday night, every Saturday morning, every Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, all the pay per views. I taped it all. And when you pop it into the VCR, it'll be just like how it was back then.
Yep. And some of the stuff that people really want to see too is not just even necessarily the programs, but the commercials, so the way that they go to break, the stuff that is about the wrestling stuff that is locally produced that just might be in front of it, just little continuities and stuff. And Joshua says, thank God for fans, because if we're not for us, it would have been lost forever. And I think that is 100% true.
Yep,
That
exactly.
we're the ones that keep that stuff alive. And you know, it sometimes you might even offer it, like for example, Doctor Who stuff has been offered back to the BBC back in the 90s, and it was rejected because we're not really interested in that right now. But it's missing. It doesn't exist, and we have a copy, and that's wrong, you know. And it's the fans that keep it going.
Yeah, and there's one show that I have that is not available on the net on the wrestling networks. And it was the night that Owen Hart died. I was taping that show, and as far as I know, they have never put that out there for the network for people to watch. But I have it on VHS tape, so I can watch it anytime I want. But I never have. But I have it.
You have it. Well, and so in 1996, that TV movie for Doctor Who aired, and I was at the Fox affiliate like 3 days before the broadcast, and on the satellite feed there was an electronic press kit that was sent down, and I recorded it on broadcast Beta SP, as well as a clean version of the TV movie that they're broadcasting. And you know, you just think that this stuff is available. And so here's the interesting story. I got my story wrong already. I recorded it onto VHS, this electronic press kit. Mm-hmm. But then the BBC was putting out the TV movie in the UK on DVD. And they're looking for extras. And they said, does anybody know how to get a hold of the electronic press kit? And so I was working at Best Buy the first time I was working at Best Buy. And I went to the media department. I'm like, do you know anybody over at the Fox network? And, you know, like the main network. And she's just like, yeah, I do. I said, we're looking for this. And I said, the electronic press kit. And she's like, okay, I can see. I mean, I'll see if they have it, but this is media, and that's like TV archive. I'm like, sure. So she gets back to me and she goes, it's going to be sent to you tomorrow. And I get in the mail the electronic press kit for the Doctor Who movie on Beta SP, which is a broadcast format. But what I found out, I didn't get a copy of it. I got the master of it. They sent me the master of it. And so I was able to get it transferred to Digibeta, and I sent it over to the BBC, my friend Steve Roberts, who does the releases over there at the time. So he had it, and I had this moral dilemma. I'm like, do I return it to Fox or do I hold on to it? And ultimately I held on to it because I felt, who's going to keep that stuff? They're going to purge it eventually, and I'm going to keep it. So I still have the master tape to not only the TV movie, but also to the electronic press kit.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Chuck just said that thing is rare.
Yeah. Well, it was on the DVD because I provided it to them, and it was so weird because I just asked, can I get it? And they're like, yeah, here it is. And you know, if they're going to give it to you that quickly, that when you send it back, it might just be purged. It still has the business card in the tape of who it came from.
Man, did you at least get recognition on the DVD for that?
I somewhere I might have. I know there used to be articles that were published through what was called the restoration team, and they did a website, and they cited me in there on that. I also got a free like a complimentary copy of it. They re-released it, and they put some of that into a documentary, and I was not cited in there. And it's like I've been credited on a number of documentaries on the Doctor Who releases. One of them being a John Pertwee retrospective that I don't even know why it was why I was credited in there. It's on the Spearhead from Space Blu-ray, but at the time, it was really important that I got that credited, but now it's just like, you're just helping out. I was also helped out on an upcoming season 5 Blu-ray set for the collection that hasn't been released yet or hasn't been even announced yet. And that was a couple of years ago. That's how far ahead they work on some of these releases. So wow. I've been working on a lot of, and very tangibly, not or tangentially, not directly, but I've helped out on a number of things throughout the years, little bits and pieces.
And that's good. And it's good to see that an American is helping out with British television, especially restorations.
That's where I'm happiest the most, because it's like it is hard. It's hard to make any sort of leeway because the stuff isn't available here, but I kind of feel like I own the TV movie for some reason, and I don't. But I feel like I have such a kindred spirit to that because it was a U.S. production, and I could use my context to help make sure that it gets, whatever. But, and finding some of that other British television stuff, it was like, it is rare for American to find it. And I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, that, just, I can relate, I don't necessarily care about getting the credit myself. Knowing that I did this is good. But an even better part is now I have a story that I can tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of these stories, it's like, wow, there's no way he can make this up.
No, there's been a lot of stuff that I've helped out with getting through Kaleidoscope that it's like, I don't put my name on it. Don't, it's just because like I said earlier on, when I was younger, yeah, I wanted my name because my mindset was different back then. But now it's just like, all I want is just to do it, just to be able to have a part in it, and knowing that it's back with the BBC or it got released on a DVD or something like that. It doesn't matter if my name's attached to it. All it matters is that it's there now, and it's in good hands. Yeah.
Yeah, because not only have you had it to enjoy, now millions of other people can enjoy it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. And I actually forgot about the electronic press kit until we were just talking about it. It's because it's been so long ago now. It's like, oh shoot, we did do that. Yes, that's right.
And Joshua, you are absolutely right. VHS are very delicate. I wish I could transfer all of these over to DVD. The only problem is it would cost me an arm and a leg. And right now I don't have a spare arm and a leg to do all of that. I probably have at least 1,000 VHS of wrestling, if not more.
Doing a transfer, because I do this, getting something that helps transfer them is pretty inexpensive. I know, but the problem is if you have one computer, that's what's taking up the time. But something to look into, and I could certainly help you with some options. Because I mean, all my VHSs, I'm transferring as well, because you just never know when they stop playing. And you just want, and there's just so many different versions that I don't want to miss out. And I do a video series on Doctor Who on VHS, so I have to have a lot of different examples when I'm going through whatever story I'm talking about.
And there's been times, even back then, tapes would just snap.
Yes. Tension.
We're playing it.
Tension on the heads will snap a tape. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I would definitely, if I were you, I'd if you can decide what are some tapes that are, really worth saving, and like that, or that are really important. And let's talk about how we can preserve that, because there might be a way that I can help you with that without you having to send me a tape or anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would be very interested in doing that because I've been wanting to get some of these tapes on DVD, and plus I have family tape from when my mom bought my dad a video recorder for Christmas back in 1988, and Dad was hog wild over that thing to the point where she's like, "Damn, I wish I never got you that video camera."
Oh yeah.
And there's so much on there that is absolute treasure.
Absolutely. And I may not have an interest in wrestling the way that you do, but I have a very big interest in preservation.
Yeah,
And and especially the family stuff, and me having lost over the last 8 years 2 parents, that stuff becomes very, very, very important as time goes on.
it does. It really does.
Yep.
And some of it has the like the only actual video film of my brother before he died.
Oh goodness, yeah, you got to get something done with that.
Yeah, because my dad got it in November of '88, and my brother died in August of '90. So far as I know, there was only one video of him ever.
I mean, even my own, even like the pre-recorded DVDs and stuff, I make digital files or digital clones of everything, and then I transfer it to a second hard drive that then I store off-site. I mean, that's how serious I am about this stuff, because it's just, you put so much into it. You put so much into this hobby that I would hate to have like a fire wipe it all out, and
I've actually been concerned about that because all of my lyrics are on this computer, well, most of them, and I still have every handwritten thing I've got that I need to get on the computer and back them up on hard drives. So, yeah, I fully understand that. And I
yeah,
need
make that a priority, because I learned many years ago, about 8 years ago, I had about 3 terabytes of like stuff that luckily was replaceable, but my hard drive crashed, and ever since then. And one of the things I thought I lost was my original web series, or at least one of the prototype to my paranormal web series. I thought I lost all the footage and stuff. I did find it on another drive eventually, but yes, it was pretty, and it was very scary, very sad.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. We're coming up on 3 hours and almost 15 minutes of this.
Yeah.
If there's anybody out there in the audience that has any more questions for Greg about Doctor Who, if not, I think we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you figure out the battery holders on those boxes?
Brad, I have to admit, I haven't had a chance to look yet. As Brad knows, since Tuesday, it's been a little bit rough. So yeah, I definitely will need to do that. So definitely, I hope to have it for Sunday. If not, that's on me.
And Chuck wants to know where everybody can find you.
Chuck is prodding. Chuck knows where to find us, but I appreciate it, Chuck. So you could friend me on Facebook, Greg Bakun. Also, the British television stuff, From the Archive, and on Facebook it's called From the Archive, a British television podcast. And one of the things I love to do on there, not just post about Doctor Who, but post like vintage articles from the Radio Times, which is the British TV guide, which I have all issues, every issue of the Radio Times. I have everything, as well as the TV Times, which is a different network. And I love posting pictures of rare stills, telesnaps, pictures from my collection. It's just a fun way for me to kind of share my love, and people seem to enjoy that, as well as where I talk about my upcoming videos, my lives, everything else. So definitely would love to do that.
And also, and I know all you guys know this, but he's got 3 podcasts for Ghostbox, radio, live, and experimental sessions on Sundays and Tuesdays.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if I've told you this, Greg, but back when you were doing your downtime, you weren't doing any shows at all, I had gotten several messages from people. Hey, when's Greg bringing his show back?
That's
I
nice.
don't know. I just know that he's been really busy and going through some stuff.
I needed the rest, and then in January kind of became more coming back, and boy, that was really fun, because it kind of reminded me the purpose of the mystery of reaching out to spirits, because you just never know what you're going to get, and it's so much fun to do, and I love reaching out and seeing what we get. So, and Tuesday when we did the aliens, that probably was the most intense spirit box session I've ever done in my life. So and it physically affected me. I know it physically affected Brad. My phone died. Brad's phone died. I think Denise's phone died from that.
Your video just flickered.
Yeah, well, they're here. I'm not. I don't doubt that for a second.
Did anybody else see that? Greg's video just flickered.
They things have not been here. It's not been the same here. The bloody nose has started on after Tuesday. There's weird things happening here. And yeah, and Brad said affected a lot of the audience that night. Yes, our ears were ringing, headaches, lightheadedness. If you watch the end of the broadcast, you would see that I couldn't even form a sentence. There isn't anything like it. And that's if you're going to do an experimental session, you gotta accept that things will maybe not go the way you want. That's the point.
I'm being completely honest here. I usually watch your show up to the point where you start your session, because that just hurts me.
We had a woman named Zanzi who was on my Facebook page, and she says that she said that she's been talked to by aliens, and she said they don't like the term alien, they like grays, whatever. And she's just like, at one point she said, you need to up the frequency of the spirit box. So I changed the sweep rate to go faster, and then it sounded much faster than what the sweep rate was, and then kind of all hell broke loose. There was a point that we got through the spirit box. We're coming, and I said, are you coming to Earth, or are you coming for me? And the response was, for you. And that, someone said, well, that might be like a kind of very literal sort of like, we're coming for you as the Earth. And I don't think so. I felt like the whole night I couldn't sleep. And as Brad says, after that, everyone was affected. There is nothing like Tuesday night. That was the strangest night. And the whole night I felt like I was being watched. The whole night I was being watched, and I couldn't sleep. I was so exhausted. I actually ended up not going to work for a while because I needed to have some time off.
So the thing about that is that you're talking to alien, but aren't you talking to alien spirits?
I think what I'm doing, the way I see it, is that I am putting out there that we're broadcasting, and we're trying to reach out to them through the spirit box. And I feel like that if they are there, that they will be able to pick up what we're saying. I never look at it as alien spirit, though I think that's a wise thing, but I felt like that they were here. I felt like that they were here, that they were cloaked. And I should get my aluminum foil hat and put it on when I tell you this, but I truly believe.
Froze.
Yeah.
You froze like this for a couple seconds. Okay, this is interesting because nothing has happened on your end as far as I could see up until we started talking about your Tuesday night show.
Yeah, I'm telling you. I am telling you. And the one thing that Brad's alluding to here that I want to do is a CE5 experiment, which is basically taking spirit box or tone box, going out to a field and broadcasting that live. And Brad has a field that he wants to go to, and maybe we do a few of them, and that's supposedly a way to actually bring aliens to the forefront.
I wonder, have you ever thought about trying to do some form of communication, but do it through a large satellite and send it out?
Yeah, I have actually. I would love to. I don't have one, but I mean, that's just it. I mean, it's just what's the best way of getting it out there? But I also wonder, this isn't definitive what I'm doing here, but I'm wondering, I mean, it feels like that this is working to on a certain level. Does it work better when you do have something that makes the signal grander?
A very large array
Yeah.
out there in, where is it, New Mexico, Arizona, one of the
Hmm.
two? A very large array. That would be a good place if you could ever get access to that one.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No, it was there. I've never, I mean, we've done a number of things that through the experimental sessions that I will never forget. One of them on Easter when we reached out to Mary, and everyone will have an opinion on who Mary is, what role she played in the history of the world. I understand that. But when I ask for Mary and I get this woman very clear on Easter says to me, I am here. And then nothing but through the spirit box for the rest of the night, I love you. I love you. I love you. We love you. We love, just like,
Wow.
holy cow.
Yeah, because I remember when you did that one. I also remember, and you knew and acknowledged that it was going to be extremely controversial when you tried to reach out to Hitler.
Yep.
I remember you had done several episodes on aliens.
Yep.
I remember when you were trying a different way with Lizzie Borden.
Yep.
That
Yep.
one was very recent.
Yep. Yep.
Um, you were
And
trying to reach.
John Wilkes Booth.
Yes,
And,
I
and
was thinking something with a president, but yeah, that's the one.
well, and I did Abraham Lincoln, which I got the Mary Todd Lincoln response, which is still one of my uh, favorite responses I've ever received. Just amazing.
I would like to see you try to reach out to John Adams.
Oh yeah,
Because my understanding of John Adams was that he was a wildfire
yeah,
back then, like a troublemaker. Even though he was trying to get the same goals as everybody else, but he was more very aggressive about it.
yeah.
The-
No, I mean, and that's just, and I like even this week I thought, well, what about General Washington? But I don't think he would talk to me. I don't think I don't think I'm his class, and I don't think that that is something he would do. Um,
I think he would be an interesting conversation, him and Thomas Jefferson.
yeah,
But I think John Adams would reveal interesting results.
yeah, no, that's a great idea, because I don't want to do. Hold on, go away. I don't want to do uh recent celebrities. I'm not Huff. I'm not that weird, creepy sort of even within the last 10, 20 years, I don't want to reach out to spirits like that. Oh yeah, we did try Ben Franklin. I don't think that one was super successful, if I remember
I
correctly.
don't remember that one.
I think that, and we tried Walt Disney as well,
I remember that one.
and that one wasn't all that successful either, I don't think.
And I remember you were trying to reach out to those from World War One. Oh no, World War Two.
Well, and also your relative was from World War One, wasn't he?
In one, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was what sparked the Alvin C. York, because you were focusing on World War Two,
Yeah.
or was it just war in general?
I think what I was doing, that was the night that I was trying to reach out to, asking anybody, like, we'll reach out to your loved ones, but we'd like to reach out to loved ones who had been in service. It's like a Memorial Day, I think, version.
I remember something about Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, there was something about Pearl Harbor, and I think
Yeah, because I was looking it up while you were talking about it
Hmm.
and finding the two sunken ships where you can
Yeah.
still see parts of it there in the water.
Yeah.
Brad, I love that idea. Nikola Tesla.
Well, I'd love to know what happened to him.
Yes, because supposedly he said something. I forget who said it, but it was very recently. Supposedly, Nikola Tesla said he figured out time travel right before he died.
Hmm.
So that one would be a very interesting one. I would love to see that one.
And also, what did the government do to suppress his work?
Oh, yeah, and it's because of some of his work that's actually given me some really interesting theories about wireless electricity and stuff like that.
Right. Right.
So now you just got a whole bunch of
I
ideas
know.
for new experimental
Well,
sessions.
and Shar had wondered if I could do Freddie Mercury, and when Shar says you should try someone, it's she has a reason for it, because you should talk to her sometime about the people that come to her, and that they're not it's not just, I mean, it's legit. And so she's like, I think Freddie will talk to you, and when she says that, you listen, because there is something to it. So Freddie is also on my list of
I
people to reach
definitely
out.
want to get her on the show, especially after seeing Paranormal Reveal that you did a few months ago.
Yes.
By the way, when is the next Paranormal Reveal coming?
I'm going to talk to Shar actually again, because we just did a Ghost Stories and Beyond that was 18 minutes of nonstop paranormal activity that our
When are you
investigators
talking about
found.
that one? Yeah.
And I think that would be a fantastic paranormal reveal, because we had about 15, 16 audio clips full of spirit box, EVPs, channeling, all sorts of amazing things that, you know, the people who, I mean, I was part of the investigation, Char was, but we, there, the other investigators who all took our class, they are the ones that need to tell the story, because it's so powerful and it's so beautiful. And for people who go into the paranormal because it's scary and creepy and stuff, this is the anti version of that, because this is just beautiful, and it tells a story and it connects people. It's amazing.
Okay, because I've been waiting on this next one that you had talked about that you were going to do, and then you weren't quite satisfied with how it was at the time you waited.
No. No, and that was the thing, and the one we're going to do, the problem is it's like when you feel like that you're the only one doing the work, even with the guests that you want to bring on, it's just kind of like, it to me, it loses its luster a little bit, because the whole point is people want to have people tell their story, to have people uh be able to share their experience. If they don't want to do it, then why have them on? And that's
I
what I was
yeah,
feeling. That's what I was feeling.
yeah, and I do plan eventually on getting Shaw onto the show.
I think you'd I think you'd I think you'd have a good show, that's for sure. She's amazing, as you well know.
Yeah, because I really enjoyed that interview you guys had with her on Paranormal Reveal.
Yeah, she was pretty amazing. And
Yeah,
that story is one of many that she has, and for her to say, like, what we went through at the Grant House as being um the most poignant of her career in paranormal, based on the fact that that you saw the Velisca one, and that there's so many other things, that says quite a bit.
yeah. That Velisca episode that affected me just listening to some of those audio clips, especially when the hail was hitting the glass. That's terrifying.
It is. Just imagine, right? And just imagine if you were there. It's bad enough to listen to it on audio. Imagine if we had to be there at that point.
Yeah,
Um, and the thing is too, it's like, um, the paranormal, like the Ghost Stories and Beyond we did on Wednesday. I've had people reach out to me, and they're like, I can't stop thinking about what we heard, and that is a very different story to the Vliska one, but it goes to show the power that, these things have, and how we can show that it's all connected. It's It's incredible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brad was saying that he thinks you should do a pay-per-view style. Um, for that.
Yeah, we thought about that, but here's the thing, right? I mean, I tried to get Nick Groff, and that was a lackluster audience. That's the thing. It's like, so for some reason, nobody wants to actually do the pay-per-view, like, if you will, like do the live and pay for it. No one wants to do it. I was going to do Katrina Weidman, but I started to realize no one wants to pay. They're asking way too much money for these people, regardless of the fact it's only 2 hours of their time. And I'm going to be very honest, I'm very disappointed, because when the night I did the Nick Groff one, before we went live, Nick said to me, he knew I had a radio show, and he said, I want to do your radio show. Once we get Death Walker in America, and that's not going to be long, I want to be on your radio show and we can promote it. I'm like, that's amazing. And he's like, talk to my handler. I'm not going to name it. So some of you may know who he is. Talk to him and we'll get it all figured out. Perfect. 2 months later, Deathwalker gets announced on a streaming service. Cool. I reach out to this guy. Well, Nick said that once he'll do the radio show and I'm supposed to reach out to you. Well, I don't handle any of his media stuff. Okay, but you do talk to him. I know that. Yeah, I don't want to get involved. Okay, well, now what? Well, just talk to him on social media. Just let him know that you want to talk to him. All right, so I've sent him messages that he has read, or his people have read. I don't know what he reads. I've tagged him on Twitter. I've done a lot of different things, and he's not responded. And here's the thing. You don't want to do it anymore, then just say so. Just say, you know what? It's not the right time. I don't want to do it, blah, blah, blah. I'm a grown-up. I can understand that things change. But to ignore me, to just plain out ignore me after spending a great deal of money on him for 2 hours of work, you can please just say, I don't want to. He's the one that brought it up to me. Just say, I changed my mind. I don't want to do it anymore. That's all. It's fine. But to not just acknowledge at all, but I can see that you read the messages. I think that's unfortunate. That's unfair. That's sad. I don't like that.
Would it be possible that there may be other people who have access to his account and maybe they're the ones that are reading it, not him?
That's fine. I mean, and I get that. And I totally think that too. It's very possible. But yet when I was promoting the event, he was all over my stuff. He was all over it. He was commenting on it. He was liking it. He was sharing it. So it was like, there, and in the number of times I've done it, you would think that somebody would have been like, this guy keeps messaging and, they know who I am. I mean, we did the event. They know who I am. So it's just kind of like, oh, well, I get the hint. I'm not going to go on. I did it like 3 times. You're not responding. I get the hint. We're not going to do it. So be it.
It's unfortunate, but stuff like that happens.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, if nobody else has any more questions for Greg, particularly on Doctor Who, I know we hadn't talked about Doctor Who in the last 45 minutes, or anything else, we're going to go ahead and wrap up tonight. Greg, thank you. This has been an awesome interview.
I thank you for having me.
Really enjoyed this one.
Me too.
And it is so nice to be able to talk about something that's not paranormal.
Even though we got there in the end.
we did, but it wasn't an old conversation, so to speak.
No.
Everybody out there in the audience, definitely thank you so much for playing along. Next week, I've got Jill Jade as a guest on the show, and apparently she has a lot to talk about. So this one here will be interesting to see what she has to say, and if that show is going to go 3.5 hours as well or not.
And it's her birthday today.
It is. It is her birthday, and she didn't stick around very long either. So she probably got something going on with the kids, because normally she hangs
Yeah.
Hangs out a lot. Um, Again, great. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having
Stay
me.
tuned for him. 2 shows on Sunday and 1 show on Tuesday. Um, five. Well, for you, it's 4 in the afternoon for the radio and
10.
10 on Sunday, and then again at 10 on Tuesday nights.
Absolutely.
All Central.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, Again, thank you so much. And for those of you in the audience, we'll see you next week. Have a good night, guys.